Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the November meeting of the Board of Occupational Therapy. We are coming to you from Glendale Community College. This place has a special place in my heart because I live in Glendale. In fact, I could have walked here if I was being, if I had more time, I would have walked here. But yeah, it's right over the hill. So anyhow, I do want to thank Glendale Community College for having us. We hope to have some visitors from their leadership throughout the time. I just want to forewarn everybody that when they come in, I may have to make adjustments to the schedule to introduce our public. So just wanted to let you know that. And secondly, wanted to let you know that because you're in Glendale, we're home to many, many things that you might not be aware of. Most specifically, the #1 bakery in the world, run by the Portos family. And the Portos family, we are having lunch. The board is having lunch from Portos today. And a little tidbit that I'll tell you, our order was actually put in by Betty Porto in a conversation I had with her. So they're a wonderful family. They were just actually honored on the Today Show for their Latino Heritage Month, which is what we've just completed. They're a wonderful addition to Glendale. We also have the Godiva people here, or the coffee family as well. So we have we have IHOP, we have Whole Foods. All of these are headquarters that are right here in Glendale. So pretty happy to have you come here, as well as this great campus who just got a very, very good grant from the state of California to continue to advance their artificial intelligence. So I have my eye on the building across the street. I hope there's an occupational therapy department to be built here soon. I tell them all the time, and hopefully I'll be calling on some of you to be faculty should they ever choose to go there in the heart of Los Angeles. So here we are. With that, I'd like to go ahead and turn it over
Can we do a roll call?
That's where I'm going.
Oh, sorry.
We're not going to start. Okay, so with that, I'd like to turn it over to Sharon, who's going to cover for Linda Doe, and she's going to take a roll, and then we'll go through the rest of the agenda.
Okay, Board Member Bookwalter,
Here.
Board Member Whitlisbach,
Here.
Board Member Cabrera,
Here.
Board Member Morcos,
Here.
Board Member Pavlovich here, President Miller.
Here.
Okay, we have a quorum.
Thank you
Linda
so
Doe.
much.
Oh, Lena Doe is absent.
Okay. So the next thing we'd like to do is go to any of the board members who have any comments that they'd like to make.
I'm gonna wait.
Okay. All right. And next we'd like to go to our public, and I'd like to start first with a very distinct introduction, if I may. We are very fortunate here at the Board of Occupational Therapy to have our leadership here, and that is our Deputy Director of Board and Bureau Relations, Melissa Gear. Melissa was appointed in September 2022. She was Chief Deputy Legislative Director at the Department of Insurance since 2014. She was a legislative advocate at the California State Teachers Retirement System from 2008 to 2014. She was also a legislative and fiscal coordinator at the California Attorney General Office from 2005 to 2008. And it goes on and on. Let's just start here. We have a wealth of knowledge at the Department of Consumer Affairs from the state of California. With that, Melissa, would you like to add anything and say anything more?
Just wanted to say thank you for that introduction. It's nice to be here. I've watched some of your meetings. This is my first opportunity to be here in person. I'm glad to be here. And so looking forward to just learning more about your board and getting to know a little bit about all of you. So thank you for having me.
Welcome. And we also want to thank our staff, our board staff that is here supporting us and thanking them. And we also want to acknowledge our public. Now, it is optional. If you aren't required to introduce yourself, but if you'd like to do so, now is a good time. Yes.
Oh, great, thank you, sir. Hi, I'm Candace Chapman. I am the treasurer-elect of the Occupational Therapy Association of California. I'm also representing the California Occupational Therapy Fieldwork Council, as I am an assistant professor of clinical occupational therapy at USC, but I'm also an academic fieldwork coordinator for pediatrics, and also the web administrator for the CAO TFC. Well, that's a lot of information. And I'm just really grateful to be here and be able to see this in public.
Nice.
Thank you.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Samia Rafidi. I am the president-elect for the Occupational Therapy Association of California, and I'm also program director of the professional program at the University of Southern California, and associate professor of clinical OT. So I teach and I practice at Keck Hospital USC, and I'm very happy to be here. So thanks for having us.
Welcome. Okay, and with that, moving on to, if there are no further public comments, we'll close that and go on to number 5. Now, before we get into today's agenda, I just want to put this out there for the board to consider, and to also have our public know that we've received materials at a later time than normal, and so the board does need time to get through these materials to really do due diligence. And to that effort, there are agenda items that we're going to really go through and dive in deep and be ready to dive in. And we're going to have to do it as we go along. So not trying to make it laborsome for anyone, but there's on certain agenda items, there's so many things that came in that we're going to try to move forward that way. We'll see how it goes. I'll be able to take your pulse. If you want to choke me, I'll know that. But I know no other way to approach this to get us into the details, so that's how we're going to start, okay? I'm just setting the landscape for everyone. Oh, before we move on to agenda item 5, let's go back. I took the introduction of the public, but did not go to public comments for items not on the agenda. So if we look at number 4, we do have a public comment that we received. I am going to read it into the record. Really, what's before us as a board is to decide if we want this as a future agenda item. We're not discussing it today. We're simply deciding if we want to put this on a future agenda. So in reading into the record, starting here, dear sir, and this is in your materials, dear sir, madam, I'm writing to seek assistance in obtaining the relevant laws, regulations, or practice acts pertaining to occupational therapists' adherence to physician surgeons' orders. Specifically, I'm interested in understanding the guidelines for occupational therapists, educating patients on the correct weight-bearing status precautions, maintaining movement precautions such as posterior hip precautions, following surgeon protocols, utilizing approved abbreviations and documentation, and exercising sound clinical judgment while working with and educating patients. I am currently employed in an acute care hospital, and I am unsure if the setting affects the information I am seeking. The reason behind my request stems from my observations of concerning practices among my colleagues. I have brought these concerns to the attention of my manager, but they have unfortunately been dismissed. I would greatly appreciate any assistance you can provide in guiding towards the appropriate resources or references that outline the aforementioned laws, regulation, or practice acts. Your expertise in this matter would be invaluable in ensuring the highest standard of care within our healthcare facility. Thank you for your attention to this matter. I look forward to your prompt response. Any board discussion?
There cannot be board discussion.
Well, really,
They want on a future agenda.
do
not
they
needed,
want it
yeah.
on a future agenda item? Yeah.
Yes.
Can I ask a question?
You- I believe so.
You'll have to be careful.
Isn't this the same
I-
thing we
yes.
discussed? Well,
Yes, I
confused.
believe it was included.
I'm confused though. Is this-
It's, yes, this was included at the last meeting. It should not be in the materials. I didn't realize that. So, this actually was discussed at the August meeting and went to the practice committee. So, I apologize. apologies for that.
So then what's before us, okay, so let's pause there. What's before us is, we don't have to do anything now. Can I just ask, did the practice committee address this? Because that's an agenda item, okay. Sorry I didn't look up sooner, yeah, would have
So
been
the
great.
answer is yes, it will be on a future fourth agenda in the future.
There you go, there you go, always putting,
We're gonna report on that today.
Yeah.
so,
Sean, did you
okay.
have anything for future agenda items? Or you want to cover that under future agenda items at the end?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay.
we're just in public comment. So just in correcting the record, this public comment was heard in August. This public comment was put on a future agenda item and it was sent to our board, our practice committee. Our practice committee will report out on it. Okay, great. Sorry, I did not look up 3 minutes earlier to catch your eye that. Okay, moving on to agenda item 5,
Any
review.
other public comment? Did they ever get an opportunity to comment?
So, we can go through that protocol. So, is there really a public comment when this shouldn't have been on the agenda anyhow?
Oh, no. The item is public comments for items not on the agenda, not only written comments, but
Got
any
it.
comments from the public.
Thank you. Do we have any other public comments for items not on the agenda? Say again?
You're doing fabulous.
Thank you.
Thanks, Candace. Thanks, Candace.
Yes.
Would you like that on the future agenda? Okay. Seeing that there are no further public comments, we're going to move on to agenda item. Can we move to agenda item? Okay. The August 24th and 25th meeting, what's before us is to make a motion to accept these minutes. I do have a number of questions about them, but I'd rather hear from the board first before we go forward.
If I may, what we can do is discuss any edits, and then the motion can be adopt the minutes with any agreed to edits, rather than adopting the minutes and then having to redo the motion with edits, if there are edits.
I think that's what she was asking for.
I apologize. It just sounded like you wanted a motion to approve the minutes.
We're all struggling a little bit. No more Mountain Dew. Just kidding. Oh boy. All right. We need a reset. Where's that sage?
So before
I
we make
digress.
the motion, are there any comments from other board members? Let's just, I have comments on page 3. Does anybody have comments before that they want to make? Really, it's not so much a comment, but going down to page 3, just in terms of moving the board's work forward. At the bottom of page 3, there was a comment about Public Law 117.333. If the service member or their spouse came from another state, it was made by Board Member Wietzlisbach. I guess what I just wanted to know from legal is, is there any follow-up on this, or is this something that you could look into and come back to us on February? It's on the bottom of page 3.
I'm sorry, the
Right
follow-up on,
This one, right above, right about the federal law for service members and their spouses being allowed to practice with soon-to-be registration, currently no registration, but soon-to-be registration.
Oh, I
So
see
it's-
what you're saying.
it's
So,
practice specific.
the understanding I have is that California law was adopting a process for us to establish a registration process to allow those military that come forward to be able to register with the departments. I believe that was adopted, but I'm
Yes,
sorry I didn't.
Yes, it is. Yeah, yes. But she's asking more specific to the practice, like requirements. Is a service member or their spouse who practices here under that provision similar to a compact, do they have to adhere to California specific practice requirements?
Yes, that was my understanding, and that's what we discussed in August, when a service member, for example, can practice something that we do not allow here in California, then they would not practice that here in California. So if they can, if part of occupational therapy is they can do medication, and then here in California they cannot do medication, they should not do medication while practicing in California. That would be outside the scope of California practice.
Would you say then that this is accurately reflects what you said?
Right.
In
Thank you.
August, this paragraph, just above the public comments title, there's one paragraph.
Correct.
Do you believe that that's accurately reflects what was said at the meeting?
I believe so. Do we have an edit?
Well, I guess what I'm saying is if your memory is that you've provided all that, then we should capture that in the minutes. And
Okay.
that,
Yeah, I believe I said all that.
Mm,
Well,
well,
what
no.
you say here is federal law will override state law.
Federal law will override state law in the ability to practice. So there, for example, if California says that you cannot practice here without a license, the federal law says they can come here because they are licensed in Minnesota or whatnot, and then we then move to adopt a registration process so that at least they have some evidence that yes, they can practice in California because they're running around with a Minnesota license practicing in California. But the federal law says that they may do that regardless of what our California law says.
But they'll still have to adhere to our practice. We just need
Yes.
to clarify your statement. That's all.
Yes.
Okay.
It doesn't say here that they would have to adhere to
okay,
the California.
So we just need to clarify
So
that.
we,
Yes.
So can I propose an edit?
yeah.
please.
Okay, I propose that for 5 paragraphs up that begins with DCA attorney, but at the end there's a short, very short sentence in that last paragraph that says this federal law will override the state law, then I would suggest that we edit it in terms of not requiring those to have a license in this state to practice, and make it specific to the license part, not the Practice Act requirements. Would that, I mean, this federal law is not saying in general regarding practice, it's really about,
Well, and to clarify, to my knowledge, there is no OT federal license, and so there would be no federal practice requirement. You know what I mean? There is no federal determination as to what an occupational therapist can do. So each one would be an individual state-by-state process, and so that's not the federal law, or that's not the state law that would override. So in Minnesota, if they can practice X, Y, and Z, but in California, they can only practice X, Y, then practicing in California, they only practice X, Y. But there is no federal law involved in the actual practice. So the federal law is transport of the license.
I guess you can look at it that way. Yeah.
I mean, unless I am incorrect and there is a federal
No,
practice.
You could look at it that way. We just have not really thought of it that way. Yes, that's what yeah. That's fine.
Okay.
Okay.
So on that particular paragraph on 3, could we also consider just striking it, that one statement? Because if the above paragraph captured what you said, and then we've captured what board member Weedsley-Fox said, is this statement, if it's not accurate, can the edit suggestion be to strike it, which we'll come back with a whole packet of.
Sure.
Strike what?
that sentence about the
Ms.
federal
Jaffe
law.
replied that using Pam's was very specific and she was unable to provide an answer for the day. Because she's reported that she provided an answer and it was detailed.
Well, what about this one? Just strike this. This is the part that I think is causing confusion about the federal law.
Okay.
I mean, unless it's clarified to say that the federal law overrides the state law, that someone must have a license to practice in this state, right? The federal law is the one that says you can work in any state if you have a current license in another state, right? You can go to California and practice without a license. That's what the federal law allows. So, and what it does is that's the part she's saying overrides state law. State law says you have to have a license to practice in the state. Well, this federal law lets them practice without a license.
Without a California
Without a California license, sorry, yeah,
Yeah.
sorry. Yeah, so,
It seems to leave open the question
this-
of
this-
if they're not a
this is-
licensee, can the board discipline them?
well, that's why that's later on another agenda, but that's
So-
one of the reasons,
so maybe we
there's a
should do-
registration.
I think this is accurate. I think this accurately reflects what I remember, and maybe there's follow-up that needs to happen on as we learn more about this process.
Okay, so as stated then, this is accurate. We verified with you that the statement that you were unable to provide an answer is accurate.
I believe so. I don't know that legal can come up with an answer for the physical agent modalities specific.
Okay, that's what
So,
it's in relation to. Okay.
So my statement is, it's a little bit inaccurate, so I'm gonna suggest an edit. 1, 2, 3. What I said was, I mean, this is, it got the essence of it, but since we're talking about it, I'm
Yeah.
gonna suggest an edit. What I said was, if the service member or their spouse came from another state that did not require board approval in advanced practice areas, for example, physical agent modalities. So I was talking about all of them, not just
Pam's.
So let me see if I understand. So for example, we have an advanced practice in swallowing.
Yes.
And so if Minnesota allows swallowing without an advanced practice, can they come here in advanced practice?
This is the
I
edit.
do not have the answer to that question.
Something after.
Right.
Because I think it would because if they are trained and experienced in that, and that's what we're looking for, but yeah, to me, that I think would be so specific.
Okay.
That would probably have to be something that required a clarification or regulation or something to that effect. I don't know that I can just
I understand
declare that so as legal.
No, I understand,
So,
but that was my
yeah.
question, was it wasn't just about Pam,
Yeah,
it was about.
and I don't know where I would even research for that. I think that is, but, yeah, I was gonna say my gut is, but you know what, I'm not. So, yeah.
So I realize that Pam's was an example, but is there,
I will
could
say
you?
it again.
Well, no, I meant, could you complete the sentence though? Because it says,
I did complete, but I will say it again.
okay.
I thought you did.
Came from another state that did not require board approval in an advanced practice area for the exam, for example, physical agent modalities.
Yep.
And so, but the question starts with if the service member, so is that, do you mean, could they use them? Or, I mean,
How about board member requesting on the spot question how public law 117-333 would affect persons' ability
Oh, right, I can go back for it.
to perform advanced practices, such, for example, physical agent modalities.
Perfect.
Under advanced practices under California law, for example, physical agent modalities.
I don't see it as a question. I see the way that, thank you, and when we get to the edit, either one works. I see the way that board member Wiesla Spock lined it up. I see it as whole and
Okay.
Or you could
period.
change Public law 7 would permit them to perform advanced practices, you could say,
okay.
such as Pam's.
Would permit. Okay. We'll come back to, and again, we're gonna, so then, I have a question for legal on the next item, moving down on page 5. So, there was a lengthy discussion, and again, I recognize we're just in minutes, but I just wanna know how to, there was a lengthy discussion around, Breeze, and it was a very robust one, and one with our public, and all of our members commented. Do we have to, so following this, very soon after this took place, there was a resolution. Do we have to hold that to items for a few, there's a resolution to the minutes, and I wouldn't bring it up on this item, but in order to share that resolution with our public, do we put it on board comments tomorrow? Do we put it on, or can we just say what the update is here because it's in the minutes?
This agenda item is specifically for the minutes, so therefore, does this accurately reflect what happened in August? So if there's an update and whatnot, then that would be reflected in something like future agenda items, or if we have a topic that covers it,
Yes, we have a topic that covers it. That's
we could
covered.
announce the resolution then.
Perfect.
But this would just be, does this accurately reflect what happened in August?
Perfect, that was my question.
Okay.
So
Can
the,
you-
so the gender issue identified or discussed on page 5 is covered under agenda item 11G.
Perfect, thank you. Okay. And then moving forward. Okay, and we do have an agenda item about, there are comments on 13 about pelvic health. We do have an agenda item later, and so I will hold those comments until then, or the questions, but it did come up. And then, okay. And then,
See, there's edit on page 14 as well.
and then we will be discussing, the proposed language around 4180 and 4181, so I'll hold on those comments too. I don't have any further comments on the minutes. There seems to be just one edit. Are there any? Two? Okay. Are there any other board comments about the August minutes, or do we have a motion to
On the-
approve with edit?
On the 13th, your name is misspelled in an area, so Helen's name.
My name? On the-
Yeah. So that's just a manifestation.
Oh, I'm used to it.
We'll find that and correct it.
Okay, and if the board determines that the edit you would like made on page 3 is relatively substantive, what we can do is ask that this be, rather than approved as is, to be re-reviewed at the next board meeting. But if the board feels that that is not substantive, then we can go ahead and trust the EO to make those amendments.
Anybody want to weigh in? I don't find them I think we could do it today, but anybody opposed, feel different? Okay, all right. Thank you for that, though. Okay, next, we need a motion. Do you want to read back the edits? How do we?
You can just say there's a proposed edit.
Okay, so we need a motion to approve with the
I move
proposal.
to approve the minutes of the August 24, 25 meeting with the proposed edits that we discussed.
I second.
If you could take roll, please. Okay.
Oh, any public comment?
Does our public have any comment? Okay, seeing none.
Board Member Bokova?
Yes.
Board Member Wittensbach?
Yes?
Board Member Cabrera?
Yes.
Board Member Morcos?
Yes.
Board Member Pavlovich, yes. President Miller?
Yes. Okay. Moving on to the board president to make committee appointments. Okay, so, where did you move my committee appointments? When you added my stuff?
I didn't move.
I have them in there.
Well, we added, right before this thing. I just lost my agenda.
I'll be moving forward in just a minute. Yeah, they were right here. I put them, so, let's see. And you put help.
I didn't give it to you. I don't
Yeah,
have,
they're in list.
do you want me to do the circles? This is one
Okay, we're gonna take just a short break. We're gonna take, it's 10:15, we're gonna take about a 3 to 5 minute break tops, and we will be coming back together, and the time is 10:10. So let's just come back together at 10:15. The time is 10:14. We're going to come back together. It's November 2nd, 2023. We're the Board of Occupational Therapy, and we're coming to you from Glendale Community College. We are currently on agenda item 6, and that is the board president to make committee appointments. So what's before us is, we have committees, and I want to formally, on the record, many of them have already been meeting, but I want to formally on the record, identify their names and appoint them, and thank everyone for their participation, as well as inviting anybody from our public to, upon hearing any of these committees, to let us know if you are interested in participating as well. There is a whole application process, but we have, our staff here would help, walk you through that. So the standing committees for 2023 and the ad hoc committees, the first off, the administrative committee consists of myself, Beata Morcos, and Heather Martin as our executive officer. Our legislative and regulatory affairs committee consists of board member Richard Bookwalter, who's a committee chair, board member Lena Doe, and board member Beata Morcos. Our practice committee, with our board member Christine Wietzlesbach is our committee chair, and we have board member Richard Bookwalter, board member Lena Doe, committee member Diane Laszlo, committee member Diane Meglio, committee member Jeanette Nakamura, committee member Carlin Daly Rayom, committee member Lynn Andonian, committee member Floyd Tron, committee member Chi Kwan Shea. Our education and outreach committee is still to be determined. And then our ad hoc committees include ad hoc committees for non-licensing serving on board committees. Our board chair, or our committee chair, is Beata Morcos. Board member Sharon Pavlovich participated. Board member Hector Cabrera, Ada Boone Hurl, and Carlin Daly Riom. Our disaster preparedness and response committee includes our committee chair, board member Richard Bookwalter, and board member Hector Cabrera. And we may be looking at appointments at our next meeting to this one as well.
Are you going to announce the appointments, though, of the new practice committee members, or at least identify them by name that you are formally appointing them?
I read them all into the record.
Okay, so that was your point. Okay, I just want to double check.
It's Danielle Meglio. I forget what you said her first name was, but it's Danielle. Since that was formally in the record, Danielle. It's Danielle. I forget what you said, but it wasn't Danielle. I think you said something else.
Oh, okay. So, but we can go through the practice committee again, since we have, if you would like that. Is that your suggestion? That's
No,
why they were read into the record.
Okay, that was your point. I didn't know.
Okay. And we want to formally appoint each of these. Members to the board. Many of these committees have already been taking place throughout 2023, and we really want to thank everyone for their participation. And we would again say to our public or any of their colleagues, it really is a really worthwhile experience to make an impact on the regulatory language by participating on these different committees. Any board member comments?
I have a question, because the legislative committee, and then maybe this is a separate agenda item, but we didn't meet this year because there was nothing was referred by the board, and then we weren't, what's the role of how meetings are organized around, like the practice committee, things are referred to the practice committee, and then the president asks the executive officer, my understanding is the president asks the executive officer to organize a meeting. And that didn't really happen for legislative committee this year. It just kind of, the timing of the board meetings too, we just looked at it as a full board and didn't have the committee meet, which is the board's and the president's discretion, in my opinion, I just wanted to know about the legislative season is over, but it's coming up in February again, and so are we?
Would you like to have a committee?
Is a committee chair to organize a meeting, or is that maybe that's a conversation between the president and the committee chair next year? I just.
Would you like to have a meeting, would you like it on the agenda for February? Currently, you're the
maybe,
committee
'cause it's
chair,
starting-
and if that's your
starting out-
recommendation.
It'll be starting out.
Okay, so if we could get that in the minutes, the recommendation to have the legislative committee,
Just address whether
Mm-hmm.
they're meeting or not meeting and.
So on the board meeting agenda?
right.
Yep, okay. Future agenda item.
There might be, yeah, remember the calendar for next year might even be, might be stuff to refer to them at that point. It's hard to say.
And the motion on that doesn't have to come until we get to discussion of items
Yep,
on
no.
future agenda, right?
Yep.
Okay.
That's really what it is.
And
Yeah.
Well, and I don't know that a motion is necessary, but we
Yeah.
can always do one.
Yep.
when we get to future agenda items, we usually, but, okay, no problem. Okay, any comment from our public? Okay, yes?
I do have a question. Where are we again with the Emergency Preparedness Committee? Is this going to eventually, are we gonna be meeting like next year?
No, actually, we're going to hold that committee meeting. We're looking into holding it the Wednesday before the February board meeting, which they're normally Thursday, Friday.
Okay.
We have to find make sure we have a room available.
In between, on the disaster preparedness, also in between, if there's any recommendation you have, Richard, for future members before and you want them appointed, we will do that as well before your February meeting. Okay. All right. There is no motion here. There's
Nope.
that was just a report out. And we really have had some really robust committee meetings this year, and so we really want to continue to encourage our public to participate that way as well. Okay. Let's go ahead and move forward now. We're on agenda item 7. And agenda item 7 is the Administrative Committee recommendation to the board on amending CC&R Title 16, Division 39, Section 4180, definitions, and Section 4181, supervision parameters to specify supervision maximums by an occupational therapy assistant and occupational therapist. As we get ready to go through this agenda item, again, I would just like to cue everyone up. We have received a number of public comments on this one. I'm not going to read, they're lengthy, and so I'm not going to read the detail of each one into the record because that would, you may get very tired of hearing my voice very quickly. I will get tired of hearing my voice very quickly. But what we are going to do is we are going to take this apart piece by piece. It's going to be so it just legal, so you know that we're aware. We're going to go through this. I'm going to be deferring some stuff to our executive director, our officer, and then I'm going to be bringing, as board members want to have comments, we're going to go there. At some point, we're going to go to our public. We may come back to the board. We may go back to the public, we may come back to the board as we go through each letter. There's a lot here to sort of, sorry to use a trending word, but there's a lot to unpack throughout this thing. And so we are going to get to the heart of this matter and get some consensus. So if everyone will join me, I would just first point out we do have 6 public comment letters. Where I'd first like to start, however, and we'll come back to each of those as I've indicated, but where I'd first like to start is to go over sequentially the history of the meetings and what was before us. And then after you go through that, if you could pitch it back to me for some comments, and then we'll open it up to the board.
Okay.
Thanks.
So the board discussed at its February meeting the recognized in the laws or the regs. The doctoral students were not, doctoral programs were not. And so there, the the admin committee discussed that in March. The meeting minutes are in the materials. After that, the language was taken to the May board meeting, 2 sections, sections 4180 and 4181. 4180 was approved, 4181 was punted back to the committee. At its August meeting, the committee realized that with the proposed amendments to section 4181, that there needed to be corresponding amendments to 4180. Because it had not been on the agenda since the board had just already approved the language, that required it to wait till the August board meeting, and explained that the committee needed to discuss again, now 4180. Since the board had already approved both of those sections at different times, and the 4180, though, they were seen separately. This November meeting is the first time the board is seeing sections 4180 and 4181 with the new edits. Previously, you saw one or the other. That is the background. There has been public commented provided about this topic, both at the 3 committee meetings as well as the past 3 board meetings. And then these public comments are all new.
But the board, what's before us now, if we could get, but the board has approved language for 4181 at our last meeting.
Correct.
And that's what pushed it. So can you just go to that language?
Yep, if you go to the very end of the materials, if you have colored papers, it precedes item 8. And it begins with a memo, and the memo is from board staff to the board. It explains the rationale and the background about the changes. That's pages 1 and 2, and then pages 3 and 4 are the proposed edits to the language, and it looks like this. So here's the memo, and then the language. Keep going. Keep going. You're quite a bit more. Like, go to the dark blue one,
Yeah,
and then
find the
go
dark
back
blue.
one.
October 24th, correct?
Correct.
On CBOT
Letterhead. Yep.
letterhead.
Yep.
Okay? So just making sure our public sees it's this item on CBOT letterhead. It's a memo, October 24th. This gives you the background, and this will set the stage for diving in further. Okay.
So, starting on page 3, the definitions shown here, again, you know, it's been not seen together at the same time. It's kind of been piecemealed, if you will. So, in section 14180, on page 3, it's adding a new definition for doctoral capstone student. In sub D, 4180 sub D, supervision of a doctoral capstone experience is defined, and it refers to the mentorship. And the reason for that distinction is that the language of 4181 pertains to supervision. It does not mention mentorship, and we recognize that's the term that's used in the ACOT guidelines. So by defining that in 4180 sub D was supposed to bridge between the board's regs and the ACOT guidelines. Client-related tasks was simply moved from the top for it to flow just a bit better. I would probably recommend switching E and F, but, and then F, faculty-led fieldwork, that is also a new definition. Again, it came late after the proposed amendments to 4181 were approved by the board. If you turn that over or go to the next page, in the 4181 supervision parameters, subsection D talks about those that an occupational therapy assistant can supervise. Level 1 and 2, you know, et cetera. Down in, there's a new number 4 where it says doctoral capstone students completing an experience in, and it lists those directly from the ACOT guidelines. In earlier iterations of this, when there was discussion, it was simply referred to clinical versus non-clinical. that's, now changed. It doesn't say non-clinical anymore. It actually specifies those areas that are listed in the ACOG guidelines. The new proposed 5 is consistent with the board's action back in May, which talks about the fact that there may be a total of no more than 3 of any of those types of individuals that an OTA could supervise. And then number 6 is another one that was new as a result of the conversations, including those folks in the academic world, unbeknownst to the committee, that there was this term, called faculty-led fieldwork. We were given a couple of examples. We recognized that even though it was not relating to the capstone, it was important to address that since that happened to be ongoing practice. And so there you have no more than 20 level 1 fieldwork students in a faculty-led fieldwork, which again has a new definition in 4180. So since OTs are the supervisor for OTAs, or can be like for students, et cetera, this section did not include OTs. So there's a new subsection E that starts with occupational therapists may supervise, and then it goes through them. And so, for example, 4181E1 as proposed, again, talks about doctoral capstones completing a doctoral students completing a non-clinical capstone. Again, the areas from the ACO guidelines are listed. There is no total on those, right? These are not touching the students, basically, or patients, I mean. Number 2, though, does list a maximum, again, no more than a total of 3, and then lists all those different individuals, limiting no more than 3 for those individuals. And one of the biggest reasons for that is talking about up in B, and that is the supervising OT's continuing responsibility to follow the care for every patient or client that person is supervising, that they treat. That was the reason for including that maximum. And then lastly, again, no more than 20 level 1 faculty-led field work. That's a summary of the changes before the board today.
Got it. Thank you. Beata, at this point, as part of the committee, did you have any overall comments that you wanted to make?
No.
Okay. Any other board members? Please.
I would like to say something about this. Having read the public comments, I was struck by the couple of things. One is there's a general sense that what ACOG guidelines provide also provides adequate protection to the consumer, which seems to be an underlying assumption of these. And that's unstated, but it seems to be an underlying assumption is that ACOG standards are enough, and that specificity in the ACOG standards is enough, and that should be enough in California for the board. This also provides fewer constraints for the field work in terms of a number of other factors. So that is an interesting assumption that has not borne out. This board takes a different perspective as a consumer protection agency. For example, and part of that comes from what has actually happened in other states. I believe Chuck Wilmarth told us about a case, and I can't remember exactly, I don't have it in my head. But I'm remembering an Ohio therapist who was supervising something like 60 people. Maybe Heather, you remember that case. And when a complaint was made or was opened about how the 60 people being supervised by this one therapist were not getting adequate supervision, the board in that state did not have any regulations in place that allowed them to discipline that therapist because there was no limit. And that is kind of where this is what comes to us as regulators, is that we have to look, are we ready for a situation like that? Because, reading the public comments and the ACOG guideline references, there is nothing addresses that from these public comments. We have to protect the consumer, we have to protect the students from receiving inadequate preparation and then passing on practicing with inadequate skills because they didn't have the level of attention that they need. So that seems to be missing from the conversation at this point, because this is way before February. This dates back to several years, and because of the timeline that we have here. So it seems to me that doing nothing, which is what everybody's asking us to do in these letters, don't regulate this area. It's overregulation. I don't think we can see it as overregulation. Now, maybe 20 is the wrong number. Maybe it's not. We had robust discussions about that for the level 1 fieldwork students. But 60, is there anybody here who would think that it's appropriate for someone to be supervising 60 students at one time? I think that we would probably agree that that's not appropriate. So where do we draw the line that can be argued? But I think that the notion that ACODE standards are sufficient is not correct. And this board also has laws in terms of advanced practice that have been imposed by the legislature that suggest that ACODE standards are not enough in the terms of advanced practice. Whether we agree with those or not, they are what we're doing for consumer protection based on the legislation. So I just wanted to bring that up, because it's kind of been lost in the discussions about all this in recent years.
Thank you for the comments. It was in our committee meeting, it was a very robust, I would just like you to know, it was a very robust part of the discussion. It was also very collaborative, and actually, Board Member Pavlovich was there, so it'd be great to hear from you on that.
No, I'm glad that Board Member Bookwalter started the conversation, because I read all the letters. Some of the people were there that aren't here today that actually helped us with the language that we see, and now there's a turn again. But, oh yes, ACO it's general guidelines, right? Across the country. They can't do anything specific per se. We know that. It's general guidelines for education. 100% agree with you, Board Member Bookwalter. There's nothing in any ACO guideline that speaks to consumer protection laws and regs. We are the only body that does that. So to make those connections in these letters was a little problematic for me, because there's a very clear line between what is laws, regulation, and consumer protection. I don't know of anybody else who has that language other than the board. So to me, it was a far reach. I understand the concerns, and I'm looking at the numbers as well, and maybe we need to talk about that. But ACO and the board, we are different entities for a reason. And so I did want to just emphasize, I had all those notes the same as you. There are two different bodies that do two different things. And so that's all I'll say until we get into other discussion.
Thank you. Anybody else have any comments? I also want to echo what Board Member Bookwalter said and what Board Member Sharon Pavlovich said as well. You know, as a person who participated on the committee, I have to tell you, it was a really collaborative, I'm very disappointed in the amount of public letters, and I don't, and so, and not so much that there are public letters, that's great, and that's wonderful, but there's not solutions or action in it. There's just a call out, but there's nothing that says how, you know, we are a regulatory body, we are appointed and in this role to protect the consumer, and we have really worked hard as a board for many years to really work so collaboratively with practice areas, with education areas, to seek out the subject matter experts to give us the language that we need to help us to put it into a regulatory process. So to receive letters with a lot of input about ACO being the overarching standard, or this, it's discredible in a sense to me, because like it's already previously been said, we are two different bodies that serve the same profession with a different focus that we lead with. And it's up to us to work collaboratively. And so for our committee to really dive in deep and really look at the code standards and to use them as the subject matter experts, combined with the amount of faculty. You know, by the way, all the public, only one of the comments came from someone who was in the room. I mean, I want to make sure that everybody knows we had multiple meetings, and the public is welcome at every meeting. And so the day before our meeting to get all sorts of letters is also disgenuine to me. Again.
Can I add a comment to that, please?
Yeah.
What I mean, you know, as a non-clinician and simply a regulator, I realize I have a different, you know, perspective. But given the collaboration at that meeting, one of the phrases, as numbers were bantered about and examples, different setting examples were given, I felt so comfortable that the phrase that we even came up was that, you know, that there needs to be consumer protection, but at the same time, the board was not trying to overreach or over-regulate, and specifically words were said to not be a barrier to either the students or the programs. That was discussed. I feel like that was what happened in Vegas stays in Vegas. Like that was a comment with the educators, and I felt like that was the thing. By considering their input, it helped us. I didn't even know about faculty-led fieldwork. I think I mentioned that you know kind of came out even though we were talking about you know the capstone. But again, I mean the input and the examples were so helpful to a non-clinician, and I just wanted to share that. Again, I want to highlight the part about and not be a barrier to the student or the programs. That was kept in mind the whole discussion.
And it was a very active, the last comment that I would make, and thank you for those, is that it was a very active exchange between, you know, what we're tasked with as a board in terms of looking at language, but really relying on subject matter experts. And we had some really fantastic faculty that came and gave input, and it was really a back and forth. And so I would encourage people to be more informed and to participate in the committee meetings that they can on a topic that interests them, so they could see firsthand the robust work that took place.
And if I could just add one more comment.
Please.
This has been, how long has this been on our agenda item that we've been discussing it? Is it more than a year?
It could go back to November of last year, but that would make 4 board meetings and 3 committee meetings. So a minimum 7, possibly 8 or more.
So I just want to make a charge to our public members, our stakeholders. It's really helpful if we can have this kind of dialogue at the beginning, because it takes us this long, almost 18 months, 2 years to get to this point. All the letters come at the very last. And I'm left to kind of ask, where was this? The first, any 1 through 7 meetings, we get this in meeting 8. Where was everybody? This happens every single time. We're scrambling to get materials together now to read, when this discussion should have been happening way before to inform much more robust discussion instead of here. So I'm just going to put out a charge for all of our stakeholders. I always appreciate, we love public feedback, but to have it one session out of 2 years we've been talking about this, and now we get letters, and we've had collaborations which I thought were going well, and they're flipped is just frustrating as a part on the board. So I guess that's something we have to work through, because we have public members here, and we can amend again, but just want to put a charge out there to be respectful of time and kind of jump into these conversations when they first start happening.
And thank you for that, and we will be coming to our public very soon, by the way. I wanted to ask, go ahead.
I just would comment that I think it's okay that they have they're taking advantage of the process, which is what everybody does in the legislative process as well.
Noted.
If there's another hearing, you can make your views known again. So it doesn't bother me so much that people are commenting. I think that that's their right and that they should do it. There is one more comment that the University of Pacific made that is unrelated to the limits.
That's where I was going.
So yeah, so okay, as long as we go there.
Yeah. So
That's even an older issue that's been brought up, but they're a newer program, so they wouldn't have the opportunity to have commented 4 years ago, when we first talked about this, is that the program was still in development, so that's what I'm thinking, that's what made me think that.
So, moving forward from the first comment letter, moving on, there's a comment letter also by the University of Pacific. Did you want to, you can certainly cue it up if you want to.
Well, some of it was the same as the other folks about, the limits on the supervision. So that was like the other ones. But the last comment they made has to do with defining the three. On page 2 of the UOP letter, definition of faculty-led field work, the proposed change was to define, change section 4180 now, Occupational Therapy Board different regulations with respect to faculty-led fieldwork definitions. That faculty-led fieldwork means fieldwork completed with direct on-site supervision by a licensed OT or OTA employed by an accredited California academic institution. And that whole issue of accredited or not yet accredited and what that means has been an issue. We've been talking about that for a while. And they proposed a different definition, a California academic institution that has submitted a candidacy report. And I just thought we should probably talk about that because that
So-
was like what where in the accreditation process does a program have to be before, in terms of consumer protection?
No, you can read it. I also, that's interesting, Board Member Buckwalter. I also had, it was that particular comment that stood out to me too, and it was the paragraph above it. So if we could take both of the response that they made, first the definition of faculty-led fieldwork and then their response. I guess what I wanted to ask is that response accurate? Or is that an interpretation? Do you know what I mean? Like, I did not, the proposed change as it stands eliminates the ability of the OT, OTA, OTD programs that are in the accreditation process from leading fieldwork experiences. Is that accurate? Did that come up in committee?
No, but I've highlighted, I think there's some,
We did
Are
have
they
a
looking at a
discussion about
previous version of the
accreditation.
language?
So, on the Title 16 Professional and Vocational Regulations, Division 39, California Board of Occupational Therapy, Article 9, under the definitions 4180, under C, it says doctoral capstone student means an occupational therapy student completing a capstone project or a capstone experience while enrolled in an ACODE accredited doctoral degree program or doctoral program with ACODE pre-accreditation or candidacy status. So we voted on this language in our last
Well,
meeting. Did they not have it, or?
It looks like their wording is not up to date in this letter, because what they said, they took the phrase faculty-led fieldwork means fieldwork completed with direct on-site supervision by a licensed OT or OT employed by an accredited California academic institution.
Right.
And then our language here on under 4180, the accredited has been taken out.
Yeah.
It says faculty-led fieldwork means a fieldwork completed in direct inside supervision of a licensed occupational therapist or occupational therapist is employed by a California educational institution. It's not an accredited one anymore. We removed accredited from there. So I think we could respond to the UOP letter by saying that language was already amended. This is an old.
Okay, so perfect, so it's not accurate.
In the way that we feel is responsive to your concerns having to do with that issue.
Agreed.
Because I do think that that's been addressed.
Okay.
And thank you for
So-
thank you for helping me work through that, because I was, I needed this process.
No, it's funny because that was the comment and I was like, I don't,
And we did adjust it based on public members that were present, right? Their
Yeah.
comments, yeah, and
Yeah.
their input, okay.
But there have been so many versions of it that it's understandable they might have pulled an old version and
Correct.
Commented on that.
Correct.
okay. And then moving forward to the next letter, which comes to us from on the proposed modifications to CC&R 41 and support of pelvic health. So if we could just start with the language on 4181, and then if we could bring this letter back again when we get to pelvic health, would that be okay?
Well, I'm sorry, it's in both places, since it addressed both
Okay.
topics, the letter is
Okay,
in-
well, I just want you to know in terms of the board discussion, could we limit our board discussion to 4181 here for this purpose? Okay, great. All right, any feedback? So this is one where they very specifically called out on page 2. This is an educational accreditation requirement that should be governed by A code rather than CBOT. Again, I would just like to make sure.
Actually, where are we?
Yeah,
I'm
where
a
are we?
little
I'm lost too, Denise. Which one?
The Loma Linda letter? Oh,
Yep,
okay, thank you.
page 2. Page 2 of the Loma Linda, it starts with the paragraph, as CBOT is charged with the responsibility, and then goes all the way down. The statement, there's 4 sentences up where it says, this is an educational accreditation requirement that should be governed by A code rather than CBOT. And again, I only call this out because, you know, I would echo that that is not an accurate statement. A code is the defining, the subject matter expert in defining body on standards of education, but we as a regulatory body must regulate to this. We use their standards to regulate to this. We are not 2 separate items, and they have no governance over the regulatory process in our state. So, okay. Anybody else want to add anything there? All right, moving on to,
I would just add that
yeah.
we can't regulate anybody who's not an OT practitioner, so we would not be able to speak to the non-OT practitioners who are supervising OT
Thank you.
students.
Correct.
Not that we don't care about that, but we have no power or
Right,
authority to
we
regulate.
have no, out of scope, no authority. Yep.
It doesn't affect that.
Okay, now, moving on to Sacramento City College, a letter from Sacramento City College. Anybody have any comments here?
This, I think we need to have a discussion about this fieldwork number, right? This fieldwork level 1, 20 students, because this was also feedback from our public members that were present, that would be feasible, and I think what.
And it exceeds 3.
Right, but what we have here is that it's not feasible, and so I think our discussion probably has to go somewhere in that direction.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And I'm glad that we have that call out. If we could we are going to, after we get through all the public letters and hear from our public, we know that the highlight, you know, we've walked away with a couple of highlights on Board Member Pavlovich, which we know these are 2 separate bodies. The comments that you, both board members, made earlier, combined with the second outstanding thing, which is this number. And so I think we're gonna get there.
Okay.
Yeah. The only thing that I would call out about the Sacramento, because we very much want our public to participate, can staff just tell me, without the opportunity to review minutes, can we just, in terms of educating, how soon do our minutes go
After the
approximately after a meeting? When are they available?
They have a couple days for edits. The internet team does require 2 weeks, so within 3 weeks, I would say.
Okay.
Within 3 weeks of the meeting.
And within 3 weeks, and of course, the board is not, like, our meetings were in August and September, and we're now meeting in November. So there's plenty of time
Yes.
for the public to review and weigh in and weigh.
Correct.
All right. And if that's not the case, they would be able to inform staff. So just making sure that our public knows that our minutes are posted, and if something is not posted to your satisfaction that you're looking for, you have absolutely every right to call the CBOT office and to ask for that information that But generally, there is a process of coming back and all the things they have to do, and it takes about 3 weeks. Yeah.
Can I add one more thing?
Yeah.
Also for the public, not all meetings are webcast. Most are, but not all. Those are posted the week following. So it's a little bit longer and more cumbersome for you to kind of scroll through and get to it. But that is another opportunity. That would be an opportunity to hear the dialogue sooner than having the minutes on the website.
Mhm. And then are there any comments at all? I haven't, okay. And then I wanted to move us forward to our final letter, and then we'll go to the board and to the public from OTAC. The 2 items called out are specific to the language, specific to the supervision and the no more than the 20. Now, we do have a representative here from OTAC. If the board is willing, would we like to just let them respond to? Did you want to comment?
Sure.
Okay.
Thank you very much. I think the main concern were the numbers and where the numbers came from. And it sounds like from what you've reported, there have been robust conversations and very interactive dialogue. And I wish I could have been a fly on the wall, or at least many people wishing they could have been flies on the wall, just to understand where the 3 numbers came from for the number of people that can be supervised, and why the number of 20 students for level 1 fieldwork. And then do those 2 things conflict with each other? Because if you're only able to supervise 3 people, how can you supervise then 20? So I think there was just some confusion there, and we talk about evidence-based practice all the time, and so a question was raised of where did those numbers come from? Like, why isn't it 2 people? Why isn't it 4 people? I understand from the board that sure 60 does not sound good, whatever happened in Ohio, but why 20? And so I think that was a lot of the conversation that I've been hearing.
Do you have it? I have memory from the committee meetings, and I can certainly answer, but I'd like to defer to you first if you want to.
Those are actually suggestions. Well, the 3, let's go with the 3 first.
That was from the board, February board meeting.
Right, but also, remind me, in our regs, do we have field work for 3 weeks, right? That was it? No, we don't, not yet.
No,
Okay.
there's no mention.
What was
Denise,
that question? Can you say it?
up in the regs, if we had anything in the regs
Well-
for 3 yet? For supervision guidelines, under the supervision
Well,
guidelines.
years ago, we've had for a long time, there's been a limitation on the number of OTAs that an OT can supervise.
Sure.
An OTA is a person who has a degree, who's been through a great deal of training. And an occupational therapist can only supervise 2, well, until recently, 2 OTAs, now 3. And so I think our public members especially, and all of us are saying, well, a student does not have the training of a licensed OTA. Wouldn't it be, how could you supervise 3 students who don't have the training when you can only do 2 OTAs who do have this training? So originally, I think we started with a point of 2, and that was being reasonable because then it matched the supervision requirements of the OT, the limits on the OTA supervision by OT. Because students are not, they're, all over the place. They don't have the skills. You can't leave them alone, right, as much as you could an OTA. And you can only do 2 OTAs. So does it make sense to have no limits on students? We did expand the OTA supervision, we'll have 3 OTAs, but still, I mean, again, you're having students who are green and don't have a license, and they don't have the skills. How can you supervise more students than an OTA who does have this training? It doesn't make logical sense, and that's, I think, the point where this came from. I think that it would be. I think the burden is on the people who say we should have fewer limits to demonstrate that this is how that makes sense to some degree. The 20 students, the faculty-led field work, I used my personal example of when I was at San Jose State and we had a class of students and we went to an adult health center and there was a faculty. I was a TA and my faculty, the faculty member who I worked for, and I was still a student. I was a master's student, and we had a bunch of OT students working with participants in an adult health program and doing practice, doing a treatment plan and working with them over a period of weeks. And that was that was what I was thinking of in terms of faculty-led field work.
And I know,
20
Being on the committee and as a public member, and to better understand the situation, I actually asked the college representative that were present, was Penny Stack and Heather Kitching from CSU Dominguez Hills, and I asked them what is the number that they would be comfortable, or they are comfortable with the supervision when it regards to the 20, and they actually said it would be more 15, 18, and since we didn't want to have just a random number, so we came up, give it an extra cushion, and we decided, and then they recommend, okay, let's just all agree on 20, but they were very clear, like, if it's more than 20, it just wouldn't be the same quality, and they wouldn't do it. So that would be my answer for that.
yeah.
We also, we were having the discussion as our group where we were really looking more at 15, and it was our subject
Exactly.
matter experts that in the room that got us to 20. So,
Both which led faculty-led experiences, right? Who were describing the types of labs that they had, how
Yeah.
many students, and what was comfortable in terms
Yeah.
of supervision and engaging with clients and patients. And so it was kind of a collaborative effort with the public members that we did have, trying to problem solve. And so we thought that would be a happy middle.
But one of the examples, I believe, and I can't remember the setting, but they said that they only took 8 at a time. I mean, that
Yes.
was one of the examples, right?
And then the other one was 12.
Yeah, I mean, there was just so many examples that were provided that helped, and certainly 8 was on the lower end, and it was setting specific, whereas the 20
Yeah.
was.
And I think in Ada Boone and Jenny, their letter, I think they said something about 30, and for me, that's a little, like 30 sounds like a lot for one person, but, I mean, we're here to talk about it, but that's where that came from, this kind of collaboration with the people that were there to kind of see what was realistic. Even though I'm in education, I tried to like step out so that we could hear from the public, because
Yeah.
I know what we do, but that's just a small microcosm compared to all the schools in
I didn't
California.
know about faculty-led fieldwork,
Yeah.
right? I mean, so, and recognizing again that level 1, especially with the COVID, right? I mean, education programs had to be so creative and make changes, ACO was, okay, virtual's fine, so they were helpful in that regard. And we know that they don't have to be supervised, again, to the point where the board only regulates those that they have jurisdiction over. And rather than the elimination of it, did you all have conversations about that?
Or a number,
Or a number, yeah.
what was feasible, or what, I mean, you guys are in it, use it in the mix, like what?
I've come to my name is in these minutes because I've been coming to your meetings when I get to them online, which is great. And so I hear these numbers and I support these ideas. As an academic fieldwork coordinator as well. And so I have two different comments and responses, and so I actually want to ask for clarification in regards to which one would you like me to respond to right now in regards to the feeling about the numbers, or my particular feeling and my group's particular feelings about the numbers. I can respond to. I'll just start from the beginning in regards to A code and being versus CBA's regulatory body. As educators, we are in that world of A code, and so that informs our decision making so much that I can see how we would not consider or even be connected to the world from which you are, the perspective you all present. And so I hear your comments in that regard and understand like that actually does make a lot of sense what you're saying, because they are not. They're not. They're two different bodies that are concerned with things. So I really respect that comment, and that makes a lot of sense to me. I also like to address the idea of like the public not being involved, especially academic fieldwork coordinators. I see a lot of my fieldwork coordinator peers in these pages, but also what we're having in the world of academia is the fact that is one, the explosion of new colleges new OT programs in LA, which means there are a lot of new people joining the field of academic fieldwork coordinators, which means there are a lot of people who are unaware of the ability to participate in CBOT. I, for one, when I was a clinician, had no idea that I could come to these meetings, nor did my employers make the time for me in my schedule to participate in these meetings or to learn the process. This is where you can access the information, this is how you can respond. I'm really excited to be here today because I can hear all that. I'm very blessed and I appreciate the fact that I'm a part of a university that allows me to participate in these meetings. And so I think that is a part of the reason why there's such a delay in participation, because people are new and have no idea that they can have a comment on any of this at all. I love that song. Even we have as an organization have issues even activating all the OTs in this state to be involved in some way to help improve their education and their own careers. So I really respect the work that you're doing, and also come from a position of knowing how hard it is to keep people OT involved. As a fieldwork coordinator, there are some of these numbers that I understand where Heather Keating is coming from. I understand when Heather Martin says, I didn't know what faculty-led fieldwork was, because I also did not know, because that's not something that we do at USC. But I also had additional questions in regards to the literature says something different beyond just 3. Like my personal experience and my personal bias and experienced students says I only feel comfortable with 3. But that is coming from my own biased perspective as a person who had fieldwork at Vegas Hills and who engages with the type of fieldwork we have at USC. The literature says that you can have group fieldworks with up to 6 students and it still be a learning experience. The literature does not speak to consumer protections though, and so that is where there's that issue of like, how do we find a good middle ground on this? And so that's where I struggle and know that that's that is the link, like that's where my own expertise and my own understanding, because I don't have a good response in regards to, I only, especially since as an academic fieldwork coordinator, who are a lot of the people who wrote these letters, we also have no control over the facilities will tell us one thing, and when the students arrive, we learn, or we don't learn, but we hear from the students afterwards that that facility also had that same OT working with 4 other students. And so that is also where there is a disconnect, is we don't want them in this situation either. Just as we are protecting the consumers, we want to protect the students. Like, well, that's no learning environment, but you hear back at the end, oh, that's what you went through. And so that also makes it really challenging, because it's we know that some businesses are bad actors. They'll do everything to protect their business, but not the students or their consumers, which makes it a challenge on both of our parts. And so that's my comment in regards to that. I did have a question in regards to the 3 at one time, and so it was in regards to timing. If a person has a level 1 student on 2 on one day and 2 on another day, who have very different responsibilities and can do things like observation. I do have sites like LAUSD, some of my higher, some of the hospitals also, where the student for level 1 is just like, yeah, you're there, but what you get to do is observe and ask questions at the end. So their acting and engagement with the consumer is far less than a level 2 student, who the progress of responsibilities gradually increases over time, which is less than the OT students who are sometimes acting under their own license, but employed like a post-professional project. When I was an OTD student, I had my own license. They were billing under my name. So what I guess what I wonder is that. Oh, yeah, of course. Yeah, I'm sorry.
No, great comments. A level 1 student does not touch the patient, right?
It is up to the comfort of the site.
Okay.
Yeah, exactly.
Because if they didn't touch the student, or the patient, we could take it out of the language. We could
No, they
easily
do.
go there.
The
But
way
they
that
do.
the way that ACODE defines it is that the level 1 fieldwork is observation and an exposure to a population or setting. but like Candace said, different sites will, adhere to that or expand beyond it at whatever, they're comfortable with. So at some sites, they could do different intervention under the supervision of an occupational therapist, and other sites, they can't touch. So there's no consistency there.
So, okay, just like our committee meeting, if we could just go there for a minute, if you could help us. If we could flip that narrative a little bit, and if we could say, okay, those are the standards, and we need to regulate to those standards, can you help us get there? So does that mean we propose language that says where we clearly spell out not touching a patient? Because we're not trying to have overarching guidance over, you must supervise like this. That's not our role. We have to protect the consumer. And so protecting the consumer is about what level of experience is touching that patient. That's where we're going. So I don't know, is there, anybody?
Candace, didn't we meet last time at DEI last year? We did. Yes, that was just a side moment. Nice to see you here. Before I forget, Candace, if you have any suggestions later on how we might better be able to reach out to those new programs and fieldwork educators from CBOT in terms of outreach, and I want to make sure that everyone understands it. I'm never against public comment. I think there's so much power, and I want more of it. And I think I was trying to say I like it early and more, a lot more than just 6 at one time. Like, give it to me every single session. If we have 8, like, come. But so anyway, we can help with outreach. But back to your point.
Well,
with 3 to 6.
no, you went to a really good point with her, because we do have an opening on our education and outreach committee that we would really like you to consider. So there's that. But
So back to this help with language and Fieldwork 1, and then it gets even more great, because Fieldwork 1 can be a faculty-led. If somebody has a faculty-based practice, then it could be faculty-led experience, and then there might be hands-on. So there's so many different iterations of how Fieldwork 1 plays out.
And to my experience, their hands-on it looks a lot of different ways. Maybe that's to be clinical reasoning of the educator, and then that clinical reasoning of the educator, in my experience, again, I'm having an emphasis on my experience only, it's not as hands-on as a level 2. It is a lot of observing, or it's a lot of providing just sort of protections. I work in pediatrics, protections to children to make sure that they don't fall. Engaging on the same level as a volunteer would in a corporation. It's also been my experience from what I've learned from across the different colleges that come to the CAOTSD meetings is that a lot of their experiences are simulated. A lot of their experiences are in a way where it's just sort of it's going one day out of an entire semester, going several days and visiting and observing different sites. It's not specifically for level 1. If you're level 2, you are assigned to a site for at least an equivalent of 24 weeks and to grow and progress. But I guess my bigger question is, how are we limiting those sites, are those OTs who would like to have and provide, part of our ethics is to give back to education, give back to the future. Are we limiting those people who are like, okay, I will responsibly, I know I can handle having 2 students on this day and 2 students on that day during the same semester? Where it's like, well, that's actually 4 students in a week. Are we limiting that person?
no.
The total. It goes to the total is what the point is. You
Yeah,
have 2 different students on one day doing, that's 4 students total, that would exceed this.
Not really. No, not really.
According to our language.
Right.
Not
'Cause
because it could be, does it say the time there? Does it say
it says
day?
at any
Does
one
it say
time.
week? Okay.
Any one time.
Yeah, but any one time could be interpreted as two one day to the next day.
That's how I would put it.
Well,
At any
you would
one
have
time,
to
on Tuesday
spell
I
it
have
out,
two, at any
because
one
that-
time on Thursday I have two.
That would be really open to interpretation.
Yeah.
Per semester.
Let me
Right, or
ask
per
you.
day.
Okay, well,
Wait,
let
could-
me
could
ask
you-
you something different then. At any one time, so they have them two one day, and then they have two the next day. Then what happens on the third day?
If they could just have no one,
Right.
right? So they're-
Is there, on the fourth day, could they have four people? Are they gonna interpret it where they think they can have four people?
I think they will interpret it where
Okay.
they think that. Oh, I'm sorry, wait, I'm sorry, no, I don't think they would. On the fourth day, they're only gonna have 3 people. They're like, and they said I can only have 3 at one time.
So the issue is like per semester, per quarter, per, you know, or per day. You know, that's the issue, or per year, as Sammy said.
Well, that's hard because one of my level ones, I went, continuously, and the other, well, yeah, I was like going every week, once a week to a place.
Also too, before we get too far away from it, because we're kind of jumping back and forth between different things, I just want to caution us, if we're going to go down the road and talk about hands-on, we think about maybe like providing intervention, because that's also like if for mental health therapists, like I'm not touching them, so I'm not hands-on. You know what I'm saying? So,
It's too gray.
yeah.
And kids, they jump on you. Was that hands-on? I mean.
What is the actual,
You're setting
so,
up.
so is, just to your comment, sorry about that.
Okay.
To your comment, is the language say hands-on, or is it just something
That's just
that
what we're
came out of my
talking about.
mouth?
I don't know if the language says it or not. I'm just,
Okay.
Intervention.
yeah, providing intervention. Yeah,
Okay, and I
would be
think the
issue.
language does reflect that.
Okay, okay,
Just
yeah.
wanting to-
I don't know for sure.
I think that came up.
So it's called,
Did it,
oh,
okay.
we actually did have a discussion
I
about
was gonna
it.
say, that came up.
And
with-
we came up with clinical direct patient client care experience. So there's clinical, there's direct patient / client care. It's actually in the minutes where it outlined our discussion around this. And that was started by, that was with the input of the subject matter experts as well.
I saw it in grade school. I was like, oh. But that was just the question in reverse that has been coming up amongst my teams. Could it be a max? Is it a max of 3 that week? Is it a max of 3 that day? Also, as a fieldwork coordinator and according to ACODE standards, a level 2 student could supervise a level 1 student. And I didn't go too depth with this, and I was just wondering if that was addressed as well.
I think we have no problems with that, right? Because that's kind of normal. Did that come up for discussion, the level 2 fieldworks, supervising a level 1?
Well, we don't
Oh,
regulate level 2
I
students
think
are
that
not
did come up
licensees.
though. Yeah, I think that did come up. This language doesn't address that.
Okay.
It's also something that I haven't frequently seen at all. The one time I've ever seen it happen, they were just more strict than the OT.
So here's what I would, I bet. So here's what I would throw out to you, just to move our conversation forward for the board to consider and for our public to consider. So first off, thank you so much for your comments. And I would really encourage you to really consider being a part of our education committee. I would even like to discuss with you being the committee chair, because I think you could help. Oh, board member, okay.
Because you're not busy enough.
With your 4 hats that I heard.
It's not intended to be like a heavy lift, but what it will do is it will get the voice, it will bring the voice more. Like, we had just a really great meeting with the educators, and it will bring, and in previous years, I know you put together, under your presidency, you had worked with the different instructors at the program directors of it. So we're trying very hard as a board in our outreach to make sure that we bridge that gap, but that we do have to regulate to anyone who's an occupational therapist. And that includes those who are in education. And so respectfully, we recognize that it's not, being in education and those experiences are not exactly what's in everyday clinical practice, but we still have to regulate to it, and so we would really encourage you to help us get there. Because the board just wants language that protects the consumer that is reasonable, you know, and so what is reasonable? And we thought we were really doing it.
I think too that we get the cases, right? You don't get to always see them. We get the closed cases, so we know what's happening in terms of, you know, we're seeing
Patient
the-
harm.
Right, patient harm. So that's informing a lot of this, right? Because we get the stories that nobody else has privy to, which is our alarm. Like, oh, there's an increase in this happening with fieldwork students and non-supervision and people pretending to be OTs when they're OTAs. I mean, it's just, so we have a hard ask out to figure out. I mean, it's hard because and I think the public members that come, and correct me if I'm wrong, they might work at an institution, but they're not representing the institution, right? They come presenting their thoughts for the most part on the process and help educate, but we need to get this out. We need to figure out these numbers.
So, I have a suggestion, because I know that you just got so much new information. What if in the proposed language, the no more than 3 total, what if level 1 students were pulled out and they were addressed in another section or subsection proposal, what have you, so that you can talk about those that are observation only experiences for level 1, or those that if it is an exposure experience, that you can then address that, and maybe that would look different as well. Then also that way, you know, you could look at the group-based or the community programs. I mean, you'd have a little bit more flexibility, I think, if you addressed whatever type of limitations you want on those level 1 fieldworks. What about that?
How many times did you say it happened, Candace? It's a good suggestion, but I don't know if I wanted to, well.
You don't want to be.
Yeah. How many times did you say it happens? Once, right?
For level 1?
Yeah. Once where, you've only seen it once
No,
where a
she's
level
talking
2.
about-
Level 2 supervising a level 1.
Level 1, yeah.
We go to hands-on versus not hands-on.
I
Correct.
that's 2
That's what I
separate things.
understand.
Yes.
I see it a lot, actually.
You see it a lot. I'm sure I just, at some of my sites, they don't feel comfortable doing it. Or, I'll be honest, my sites are like, we're not doing a level 2 and a level 1 at the same time. We'll do either or. Like also the OTs are also very pressed as well in regards to do they take 2 or not. So a lot of my sites won't take both, but let's take 1.
So, okay, and so then we move, so then, because we have to address because we're also talking about the hands-on versus non-hands, okay. So where are we at? We want to move to, what are the board's thoughts on this?
I would speak in favor of the language that exists, because the at any one time thing isn't exactly clear, but I mean, regulations aren't always exactly clear, and maybe we can work that out later, and it does give a cushion for people who want to limit what the number of students they take. You know, it helps. I mean, I'm comfortable with the language, having heard that you've gone through the number 20 with in your subcommittee, and I'm comfortable with the language, and I would speak in favor of approving the language as it's been presented to us.
I agree.
I'm hesitant only, you know, I was on board, I was a part of that meeting as a public member, but we have other numbers people are really worried about.
Well, I
mean, it's a big thing. Like, if this regs and law, we're not messing around when it becomes law, right? Like this. I mean, I don't know how we get there, right? We have 2 individuals here today, and we had 2 last time, or maybe a little bit more at the other meeting. I mean, you're talking about, and it always never ceases to amaze me. You have almost 21,000 practitioners in the state of California, and 4 people are making the decision on a voice, which I understand why these letters come, right? But that's mind-boggling to me. And so it's like, how do you help everyone when there's a representation of less than I don't know how much percent. So I'm stuck, because I don't want, and this is serious, like laws and regs is no joke. I love our language, I think we got a nice place, but I don't wanna dismiss the concerns about numbers. I'm really clear about A code and, the separation, if you will, but, I don't know.
So I have a question to that, if I may. So if we vote on the language today, when is it being presented as a packet?
Well, one.
And specifically before the February meeting is what I want,
Yeah.
that's where I'm going.
Maybe, well, so submitting it though, I mean, there's a lot of work to do to put that rulemaking file together before it's even submitted for control agency approval, which I would, DCA, and, Business Consumer Services Housing Agency, but the Department of Finance also looks at it. So you got 3 different agencies that all look at it before it can even be noticed and made available to the public. And the one thing, what I wanted to ask is, because in terms of that 3, we're gonna have to be able to justify that. If the 3 the board approved on back in February, right, that was sort of the initial step before all this. If that number 3 is a consumer protection issue, we're gonna have to explain why. So I believe at the time there was a conversation about, well, the OT has direct continuing supervisory responsible for every, the students and every patient they see, right? Level 2 student. The OTA, every student they see, right? Now we've got doctoral capstone students that are hands-on. So that it exponentially, there's this number, this magic number, right? And I feel like it's a range. I don't think, I don't know, some people get treatment weekly, twice weekly, every 3, I don't know, right?
And there's some individuals that don't treat at all for doctoral capstone.
And so, well, those aren't covered under this
Okay.
though, right?
Okay.
And so, but in terms of that, in terms of us to justify this, we need that help. So I know the board approved it, and yes, we can move the package, but, all the public comments they're not just here now. I don't believe that when this language is actually noticed for its mandated 45-day public comment period, that there will be fewer, right? And so I would just suggest, even if any one time is not clear, I would strongly suggest you don't just kick the can down the road, because we're gonna find out in October or November of next year that this won't work, right? And so if there's concerns about the definition of at any one time, or that wording isn't clear, staff need that as well.
Can we do a feasibility study? What does that look like? Asking the consumers what, in the state of California, and those that chime in, like the number, or what is the feasibility in your practice area? I'm hesitant now because I know what this means moving forward, and I don't think we have the number. I don't think it could be the number, but I don't know if it's the right number.
So let me ask this question, if I may. Again, back to, I'm very uncomfortable that we would go a whole other year and a half without any regulatory language. So I guess where I would try to understand is, if we notice it for packaging and there's public comments at 45, we still have to respond to those, and if the board addresses the language then and comes up with different numbers, it can be identified there.
After the 45-day public comment period, when the language comes back to the board for adoption, based on the public comment, if the changes are non-substantive, they're clarifying, for example, you can go out for another 40, and you want to change the language, you go out for another 15 days. If it's substantive though, if you realize that to address those concerns, the language itself would have to change substantively, that starts it over. So.
And the numbers,
Is a number substantive?
Yes.
You have to explain it, so.
If I may. So, if part of this pre-process is to kind of weed out a lot of comments and lack of clarity, and to find a number that is justified, so that when it goes to OAL, they aren't asking, what does any one time mean? Or the agency isn't asking, what does any one time mean? Does it mean per hour? Does it mean, per year? Like, what does any one time mean? At that point, the board will have to to define it. And then if you're already in your 1-year process, as Ms. Martin said, that would require another 45-day comment period. And once you reach your year, it has to be withdrawn once it's gone to OAL. And so now's the time to kind of make sure everything's hammered out so that once it goes to package, it's as clear and as smooth as possible. And for example, the 3, we can, once you have a regulatory process, if 3 is the number, we justify it by, there's a law that says 2, but this is more reasonable here, and these are the discussions, we hit 3. Then we get comments, we can adjust that number, but yes, that number would be substantive because that increases a great deal as to how that affects teachers and schools and processes and a definition of what is reasonable.
Our justification.
Yes, and because our justification has now changed, but justification can change based upon comments. But that is part of why this pre-process occurs and why it's allowed and why we provide it to the public before we go quote unquote live, to try and weed out all of this so that our 1 year is as quick and fast as possible.
And that also means when you say justification, if you had a study, I know we do this all the time, what are other states doing in terms
Yes.
of supervision? Getting numbers from as many people as we can, Ohio, Colorado, and see what their number is, and then come forth to kind of hammer this out a little bit more, and be a
Yes.
little more finite with that. To have justification for
Yes.
if we decide the 3 or the 4, hey, this is what the majority of states are doing in the nation, and we are the, probably, not that we're copying anybody, but it gives us a nice figure to be able to justify a number for the state of California.
Correct. So basically, it can't be a number drawn out of a hat.
Correct.
They can't just say, I don't know, we rolled a dice and it came up with 3.
Yeah.
That wouldn't be a good justification.
Which
But
is the
the
comments-
analysis starting with, well, we already have something.
I do want to move us forward if we can.
Oh, yeah. So the analysis of having a 2, and then, based upon discussions, that was too small, so we're making this 3. That's a justification. And then as we get comments, someone's comment can say, whoa, you're right, let's do this. Or as Ms. Martin recommended, it's maybe a big difference between supervising up to 3 that are actually interacting with the patient versus, 15 standing in a corner just looking. So, yeah, but anything that we justify, we can have it in there and then the comments can assist. Or we can say, thank you for your comment, however, the rationalization that we utilized is appropriate and what we did in committee and board meeting and whatnot, and we remain with our current justification.
Okay. Richard,
Richard goes
go
first.
ahead. I didn't see, I'm sorry.
I was going to ask, but to Dr. Pavlovich's point and Dr. Chapman's point, the number thing about what, I think when we recently changed the OT to OTA supervision requirement from 2, you could only supervise 2, then you could supervise 3. It did come back to us did it not, Heather Martin, about why are you loosening this regulation from 2 to 3? That was a question that we had to address. So changing the number was, they wanted to know, this is they almost didn't want to approve this relaxation of consumer protection. So you are locked into that number once it's enacted, and to change it later would be hard to do.
Well, if I may, it
require
depends upon the justification. If the justification is not clearly laid out in the ISOR, then they will ask for additional justification. So a lot of times it's how it's documented.
So that is an argument for.
That's in statute, and that only applies to OTAs.
Right.
That's the only limitation.
No, but when we went to change it from 2 to 3,
That was a bill.
yeah, there was a bill and there was a, okay.
Yeah, and the legislature is a different animal
That was.
to work with than OAL.
My comment was what Candace said, like, I have no problem if today they have 2 or 3 and the next day they also have 2, right? My thing is, as long as we clarify that at the one given time, like that day or whatever, at maximum 3, that's it. Like, if it's more than that, then your consumer is no longer protected, because then you spread yourself too thin. So I think if we clarify that, and if everybody is comfortable with that, so it would be maximum 3 per,
And I also,
given time. So yeah, that's it.
I also just want to point out, just so you know, the working motion of our meeting as well. Beata, our vice president, is also a public member. She's also a mother, and we put her in the scenario of a consumer of occupational therapy services with our educators. And she really contributed a great deal to what she would be comfortable with as a parent who would be receiving pediatric occupational therapy. So again, just want to relay the robust, but in terms of getting us to action, what do you think about this to the board? What do you think about this? I hear Board Member Pavlovich wanting some evidence and wanting some feasibility study, and certainly staff can be directed to look at what that feasibility study, what's involved in that. At the same time, could we also look at if there's current evidence already available? ACODE's probably done that type of work, and we could lean on them or have to even talk to their leadership about what our numbers might look like. We might even invite them to be a speaker in February. At the same time, we could bring this also back to committee, and we would invite our public to participate, and we're narrowing in. If we were to go back and it really narrow in, I think we're almost there with the language. I guess what I'm saying is, I think we're almost there. I hear from other board members that they're comfortable with voting. I'd be comfortable voting. But I also hear that there's equally so people who are not ready to go there. So why don't we bring this back on February before the board for a vote? Why don't we send it back to committee before then? Why don't we invite our educators to help us with the term of the number, and then you can look into the feasibility, but hopefully by February this board would be at some point ready to vote on language, because right now we have none. And we have some, but we don't address we don't address all the work that we've been doing for the year. We've addressed it, and we've gotten to such a close place of consumer safety that, I just want to make sure people remember that.
So the committee would take a second look at the numbers and a look at what any one time means.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Is that, because that sounds reasonable to me.
Well, there is one of the comments also talked about if the faculty-led fieldwork experience ratio exceeds 1 to 15, the program must be able to provide ACODE with a sufficient explanation and justification of how safety and quality of instruction are managed. So the irony there is that we're allowing 20, and if they did do 20,
now you know why I wanted 15.
Guess what? They're all going to be having to report that to ACODE, which is like going to be another burden. So to say 20 is not good, let's not do it, I'm not sure, maybe perhaps they weren't aware of that requirement.
That's why I wanted 15. If you remember, I was pretty adamant, but, okay.
Yeah.
I do have two clarifying questions.
Yeah,
Thank you very much for this dialogue. It's so helpful to hear it.
we hope you come to our next meeting as well.
I will.
Bring as
I
many
think I'm
faculty
roped
in.
in now. This is so exciting. It's way better than being at work. Oh, this is being recorded. Just kidding. I love my words. Do the two do these two sections conflict with each other? Because it's saying that OTs may supervise no more than 20 level 1 fieldwork students in a faculty-led fieldwork. And then in the other one, it's saying that you can't supervise more than 3 people. What's the big difference there that's tangible? Because a faculty-led fieldwork could also be clinical. Because if I work at USC and I work at Keck Hospital, and you're saying I can supervise 20 people, I could take 20 students to Keck Hospital, but then the other one is saying I can only supervise 3. So this is very confusing to me.
And if I remember,
I think it should have been excluding faculty-led.
Excluding?
Yeah.
excluding faculty.
Or that shall not apply, or the number 2, and Mellon would be better with this, but put the exception in the E2, for example, so that they don't conflict. So that's a wording thing our attorney can help with.
But it was also because you had OT students, fieldwork 1, fieldwork 2, and a doctoral student, which are different from
The level 1
the
faculty,
level 1
where they're all in the
faculty.
room, direct line of sight,
Yeah.
ideally, which,
That came up.
that was an example that was provided as well.
The direct line of sight that's required for fieldwork level 1, for level 2, not so much with doctoral, except if they're clinical, right? That's what the worry was there versus a faculty-based practice. If I remember the people working at the Y, that was one instance that came up or something. But I could see the confusion, Sammy, that
Yeah.
we need to look at language there.
Thank you.
So, just to let you know, there will be a board meeting in February, where the board meeting is in the beginning of the month, right?
Yes.
And it's in Sacramento?
It's not because we couldn't get the room. It's still going to stay in San Diego.
Oh,
Yep, we weren't able to get it.
darn.
San Diego's not a bad option.
So the reason we're at is, what it means is that we would be looking at just want you to know, we're not gonna have a meeting before Thanksgiving, but we'd be looking at a meeting sometime before that February,
February 8th and 9th.
February 8th and 9th, and so consider that your date card is full and don't accept any other invitations until we give you our meeting dates. No, I'm kidding.
I'm
I'm
gonna
kidding.
put a hold on the calendar. Okay, so that was my one question. The other one was, and maybe I just don't know enough, and I should read about this before I ask, but the 3 OTAs to 1 OTR, how did that number come about? I know you said it just moved from 2 to 3.
Do you want me to tell you offline? It was a bill a couple years ago.
Okay.
Are you good?
So I should check with others.
I'm not sure how that came about. It was 2, it's been 2 since the board's inception until, I think 2018 or 19 maybe?
18 or 19?
Maybe 22, 21, I believe.
Okay.
Thank you.
So, do you have any comments, board member? Okay. Board member Cabrera?
No.
You haven't spoken of, okay. So, are we, just in terms of this particular item, where we're going is we're bringing it back to the committee. We're gonna look at the language that we wanna vet out. We're gonna look at the number. At the same time, just if you could have the information on the feasibility study to satisfy that meet. And then also we'll look to see if ACO really.
So in terms of feasibility study.
I don't know if that's the right word.
So.
Maybe just get stats.
So, do you want for example, we could have a Survey Monkey go to all the California programs, for example.
The literature that Dr. Chapman referred to that says that you could do 4 students or up to 6 students or something. You said there was some.
But that was an ACOT guideline, or that was a white
just
paper? Literature. Okay.
Something like
Can
that.
you email that to me and I can give me? Okay, great.
We'll get literature and then maybe like a simple doodle poll or something out there to everybody to see if they're respond. Get
But
some
you wanted
numbers.
also other states. You wanted other states as well?
Is there a way to?
Or no?
Well, that would be a question
Sorry.
to ACO, so that's why we said we'd ask
Yep.
ACO. And so I think to clarify what you were really, and so when I heard feasibility study, that's where.
Sorry.
So really what you're wanting is you want evidence, you want data.
The
and-
justification, so
and
it's
you
not
want
just that.
You got it,
When I
okay.
said feasibility study, I said dollar sign.
I know,
Yeah. Yeah.
wrong words.
That's,
but I mean,
I was like, oh.
feasible to our consumers, what's realistic for them,
Yeah.
and then come back and compare with the reality of the literature, the numbers from a poll, and then come to a happy place.
Is,
Yeah, I think we're looking for the word like survey and review of
Sorry,
data.
sorry, everybody. Candace, were you gonna say something?
I was going to say that if you would like to send me a survey, I can forward it on to the members of the California Fieldwork Council.
We have them in an email list.
Perfect.
We do.
Yes.
what we would appreciate though is a little help from you to ask them to fill it out. We'll send it.
That's the hard part.
We'll send it, but if you could help motivate that, we would really appreciate that.
No problem. Also, I wanted to make you aware that one of the letters, the first one written by AD, she provided the links to actually two parts of two literature items that support the collaborative model, and that is what it is when you have one fieldwork educator working with a group of students. That can provide additional literature, all kinds of PDFs. identified these and also emailed them to you.
Yeah.
Great. Great, thanks so much. Is our public satisfied that you've been able to comment enough? Okay.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for all your input, and thank you to the board for going down this long process, but we're getting to a good place and it was necessary, so thank you. There's no motion on this item and there's no action. What we're gonna do, we are breaking for lunch at noon, but what we're going to do, if we could just look at the agenda, we're gonna hold over item 8 till tomorrow, that discussion, because that'll be a lengthier discussion. If we could have our practice committee report.
Do we need to accept C and D? Do we need to accept the minutes?
Yes, please.
Do we want that? Okay.
Yes.
I move that we accept the minutes, C and D, the minutes to both of those, administrative committee meeting minutes for March 22, 2023 and August 18th, 2023.
I'll second.
Okay, well, vote.
Public comment.
Oh, public comment?
Public comment on our minutes?
I've been on the board before, and I know how hard this whole thing is.
Thank you.
Okay, ready? Board Member Bookwalter?
Yes.
Board Member Whitlisbach?
Yes?
Board Member Cabrera?
Yes.
Board Member Morcos?
Yes.
Board Member, me? Yes, Sharon, yes. Sorry. President Miller?
Yes,
Motion carries.
thank you. Thank you for bringing us. Okay, so that item is satisfied. Number 8, we're gonna hold over till tomorrow. Number 9, practice committee report to the board and recommendation to the board on prioritization of committee assignments and next step. Did you want to give that report?
So just briefly, in 10 minutes, okay.
Do you think you,
No, I think it's short.
if you, okay.
I can do it, I can do it quickly. So, just so you know that the practice committee highlights, I think were made available to you over here, is that right, Jody? Okay, so if you wanted the practice committee highlights, we had a meeting, it was a remote meeting via, what's it called, Zoom or?
WebEx?
WebEx, on Friday the 13th, October 13th. There were several of us there. You can see who was there at the if you look at the minutes. But basically what we did during that meeting is we looked at the items that the board had tasked to us, and we prioritized those and talked about upcoming meetings, when we might schedule those, and how we might prioritize the meetings, and when we would discuss each item. And so what we decided collectively, and Richard, feel free to chime in here at any time, is that at our next meeting, which is going to be December 8th, we will be tackling for sure 2 items. One is whether or not suture removal is within the scope of practice for OTs, and whether advanced practice approval in hand therapy is required to treat cumulative trauma issues such as carpal tunnel. So we'll definitely look at that. Me and Diane Josephs, Lazio, as she's now known, will be providing the staff with some background information to provide to the rest of the committee to help with that discussion. So we hope to get a recommendation to the board after that meeting on those 2 issues. And then if there's time left over, we're also going to start discussing ACOT guidelines and considering whether we can reduce advanced practice education and training requirements for students graduating after a certain date, as well as reviewing education and training requirements for licensees demonstrating competence in advanced practice areas, and talk about maybe perhaps reducing education and training hours needed. So we were going to start discussion on that.
Eliminate or reduce, either way by.
Okay, I'm just following.
Oh, sorry.
Okay, eliminate or reduce. Okay.
Eliminate, you're the advocate for eliminating advanced practice, you personally.
Okay,
On the record.
on the record. So we will start a discussion on that, and I will also be providing some information to the staff to provide to the rest of the committee members. In preparation for that discussion, we are looking for another member of the practice committee who is in private practice before we discuss the item that was tasked to us about whether or not not whether or not, how long a private practitioner would need to retain their records. So we are looking, so since you're appointing members to our group, if you know anyone who.
Bethany Nelson?
Who'd you say?
Bethany, Palm Desert Peds Clinic. She's been in practice for a long time.
I think I might have actually reached out to her. I think I left a message for her and never heard back from her, so I don't know if she didn't receive that message or wasn't interested.
Or
but-
Freddie Berger.
So,
Is that correct name?
um,
To my own time.
so yeah, so we're still looking for someone before we tackle that issue. We did actually tackle one issue, which was the item that we thought was, public
New
comment
public
received
comment, but it was
via email. So if you did read that comment at the beginning, we did actually discuss this as a group. And I want to get this right because it was a long discussion. I'll use your words, a robust discussion about this issue. What the email was looking for was some board guidance on obtaining relevant laws, regulations, and practice acts pertaining to OT's adherence to things like physician's orders and weight-bearing status and precautions, just some general things like this. And after a long discussion by the committee members, what we came up with is that we recommended that the board remove that item from the purview of the practice committee and give that to staff to advise the person who sent this email that they should call upon their own knowledge, skills, and abilities along with the protocol of their specific employer, because we felt like this was just too big and too generic really for the board to really regulate. That it really had to do with employer protocols and just generally.
I agree with your committee wholeheartedly, frankly.
That was our
If you don't mind me
recommendation.
weighing in there, I thought it was too big of a question, and I thought there was a setup in there, but that's me.
So I don't know if we need, so now that that's our recommendation to the board, do we need a motion for that, or how does that work?
Your recommendation for the board is to send it back to board staff to
Respond
To respond to this
inquiry.
inquiry,
And
yes.
does board staff have the comments from their committee? You
Mhm.
attend, okay.
So does that take motion?
Yeah, if the board's gonna take motion, it would require, board's gonna take action, it requires a motion.
Okay, so I'll make
So
a
you're
motion.
accepting, the board would accept the committee's recommendation to remove that from the practice committee and,
No, there's,
direct staff to address it.
can we do a motion and, can we
Yeah,
do a
you-
motion?
yeah,
Yeah.
You want to go back?
Christine
Yeah.
just did a motion.
Can you just give me 1 second? I'm sorry, the
Yeah,
university
the food's here.
president
Is the food here?
came to.
There's motion, should
we
we
lock
call,
out
we
the
still have
university
quorum.
president?
Yeah.
We still have quorum, so there was a motion by Christine, I will second. We could take
Okay.
a vote, because we still have a
Public
quorum.
comment.
Or public comment?
Okay,
Okay, went to public comment? No? Okay, yeah.
Okay.
okay.
So we'll take the vote?
Wouldn't have been helpful.
Well, too late now.
You want to redo it real quick?
What happened?
Yeah, so can we make the motion, please? Did we make a motion?
We
Made a
did,
motion,
and then I
seconded.
Oh,
seconded.
then I have to,
Ask for public comment, so we're at
And
the
then there
vote.
was- No,
okay,
there was
then
no
I will,
public
will I
comment.
be able to vote, Helen?
Yes.
Okay, go for it.
There was no public comment, right?
Correct.
So then, vote to go?
Yep.
Okay, Board Member Bookwalter?
Yes.
Board Member Whittlesbach?
Yes.
Board Member Cabrera?
Yes.
Board Member Morcos?
Yes.
Sharon? Board Member, yes. President Miller?
Yes.
Okay. Motion
Um,
carries.
did you really second it?
I seconded.
Yeah, I didn't second it.
Okay, I
did.
thought I heard you say.
No, I said it was seconded.
Oh, I thought you said,
I didn't
I'm
second
like,
it,
wow,
no.
our attorney, wow. Wow, that's, okay,
Okay,
So-
do you want me to finish up?
please.
Okay. So, and the last thing we discussed is just pending any discussion we may have today at this board meeting, we may be discussing in the future whether dry needling and wound care is within the scope of practice. But we were waiting for that to be officially
tomorrow.
charged. Yes, we may be discussing that tomorrow.
That's on discuss tomorrow.
Yeah, based on our discussion as a board.
Perfect.
Okay, and like I said, our next meeting is December 8th. We're still looking for members to represent different practice areas. I'll be getting with you to let you know what those practice areas are, and
Awesome.
that's my report.
I want to say, I'm so excited that we actually have a full functioning practice committee, and I know how hard it was to reach out to those people, so
It was a lot of work.
I know, I'm just
Yeah.
super, super excited.
Yeah, but we have a great group, and we worked, I mean, it was,
I'm excited.
it'll be good.
Congratulations,
It'll be
and
good.
thank you. For being able to move that needle, Christine, or Board Member Wietzelsbach, it goes really, it's really important for the board. And thank you, staff, for getting the applications through so that we could have these
Yeah,
people.
staff really did a great job in moving those applications quickly, so thank you so much.
That-
Yeah, making that happen.
So here's where we are. Here's where we are. It is, before we break for lunch, I'd like to take the opportunity while we're still meeting, and the timing worked out perfectly. I'd like to just introduce the president of Glendale Community College, Dr. Ryan Corner. I'd like you to come up and just say something about yourself and this great institution and.
Sure. First of all, welcome everyone. Glendale Community College has been around for nearly 100 years. We're actually going to be celebrating our centennial coming up in 2027. And it serves a unique purpose in our community. And I like to say that we really want to emphasize on the second word of Glendale Community College, which is the community. And that's part of why we were so happy to host and have you all here, is because these types of meetings and bringing people onto campus is important in terms of how we build our relationships and in terms of how we can show what the public has invested in. And whether that public be our local, who have supported us through bonds or through the state funding, these are institutions that really support students and, more importantly, support those in our community so that they have the correct workforce and hopefully one day a great occupational therapy program as well, which we're going to be working on.
I told him in my intro comment. I was foreshadowing.
Foreshadowing. It's a great community here in terms of educators and folks that are working to make sure that our students have their best interests taken care of. They're creative, they're innovative, and they're all very excited to have you all here. So welcome. We have a saying, we are the Vaqueros, that is our mascot. And we say once a Vaquero, always a Vaquero. So you are now officially part of the family, and you will always be a Vaquero and welcomed here on campus, and we really thank you for being here.
Thank you for hosting.
Thank you.
Dr. Corner, before you walk away,
Yes.
could you just say something about the really outstanding, innovative AI?
Actually, it's funny you mention that because that's my next meeting. One of the things we've been working on is really creating a sense of innovation on campus. I think far too often in education, we're so worried about taking risks because we want to do right by our students that we don't do things that are on the edge, that are on the perimeter, that really could change lives and have a powerful impact. We will actually be having a press conference next Wednesday where we will announce that we received from the state $4.5 million to build a state-of-the-art virtual reality center. We're partnering with a group called Dreamscape, which is run by Walter Parks, former head of Amblin Entertainment and DreamWorks. And we will be bringing state-of-the-art, fully haptic, walk-through virtual reality experiences into the classroom. And we're very excited about that. We're taking a group of students over to their corporate headquarters today so that they can experience it ahead of the schedule. And it will be something that will be truly remarkable and part of what we're building here. We're building a new program in artificial intelligence and machine learning and just trying to find ways that we can stay ahead. I think that each of us had an experience in college where the college had something higher tech than what we were used to. For me, it was high-speed internet. I've never seen high-speed internet. I was used to like a photo taking 6 minutes to load. You're like, okay, see somebody's feet. Knees, okay, we almost know who this is. But commonly with students having so much technology at their disposal, it's incumbent on us as educational institutions to reintroduce innovation at a higher level so that students get excited about coming to school and realize that school is ahead of them, not asking them how we keep up. And so hopefully what our students will find is that this is a place that will spur their innovative spirits, their creativity, and really stoke that well, and then they can succeed here.
Excited. Thanks again.
Of course.
We appreciate
So we are going to, it is currently, if you're able to just stay one more moment. It's 11:59, we are going to adjourn for lunch. When we come back from lunch, we do have a hearing at 1 p.m. and then the board will go into closed session. I'll then, after the hearing, I'll then advise us of the schedule changes and the adjustments, but for now, we're gonna adjourn. We do have lunch here, and, thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
And we will.
Would you like to either share or in the private closed session?
Oh, we'll probably. So, we're going on the record, and I'm gonna introduce, today is Thursday, November 2nd, it's 1 p.m. We are at the Board of Occupational Therapy, our meeting at Glendale Community College. We're going into the matter of the petition for reinstatement, and I'd like to turn it over to our judge.
Good afternoon. I'm Administrative Law Judge Thomas Heller. I'm going to start the matter of the petition for reinstatement of Danielle Clenenden before the board, quorum of the board. This is an Office of Administrative Hearings case number of 2023100328 and a board case file of 2023000237. If I could get appearances, please, of the parties for the record, starting with counsel for the Attorney General.
Good afternoon, Your Honor, and board members. Deputy Attorney General Langston Edwards appearing on behalf of the Board of Occupational Therapy pursuant to Government Code 11522.
All right. Could the petitioner identify herself, please?
Danielle Clendenin.
All right. And you're representing yourself, ma'am? Okay. Since you're representing yourself here today, let me explain a little bit about the procedure that will be followed. As I mentioned, I'm an administrative law judge. I work for the Office of Administrative Hearings. That's a state agency that holds hearings for a large number of other state and local government agencies. Today, I've been assigned to preside over your petition hearing with the board, who's here to evaluate your petition and make a decision on it. It's the board's decision as to whether to grant the petition under certain conditions or not grant the petition. And so I'll be hearing and I'll be asking you to present evidence to the board as to the petition. So the burden of proof is on you to establish that you're entitled to reinstatement of your license. I'm going to have the Deputy Attorney General, Mr. Edwards, first offer the petition documents, the jurisdictional documents of the case, including your petition and any documents you submitted in support of it, and I'll have him outline the background of the case. After that, you may make your presentation to the board. If you have any additional documents that were not already provided to the board and included in the package submitted to the Deputy Attorney General, you may offer them in evidence. You may testify on your own behalf, and you may call witnesses to testify on your behalf as well. Members of the board and the Deputy Attorney General, Mr. Edwards, will probably have some questions for you, and if you have any witnesses when you or they testify. You have the right to raise any legal objections that you have to any questions posed to you or your witnesses. To do so, you could state the basis of your objection, and then I'll rule on it. After the petition has been heard, the board will meet in closed session for deliberations. The board's decision will likely not be announced today, absent I hear something different, and they'll issue a written decision on it at a future point within the time constraints of the government code. That written decision will be mailed to you as soon as possible, probably within a few weeks. Do you have any question about the procedure today?
I do not.
Okay. If at any time you do have any questions, you can address those to me, and I'll see if I can answer them. I'm not your attorney. I can't give you legal advice, but I want to make sure you understand the procedure as it goes. As you have noted, there's a court reporter taking down everything that's being said today, and so there will be a written record made of all the proceedings. So I'm going to turn first to Mr. Edwards and ask you to proceed with regards to the petition documents and any background you may wish to present on it.
Thank you, Your Honor. I'd like to first mark for identification the exhibits that are being used at this hearing. I'd like to mark for identification as Exhibit 1, the petition for reinstatement of license. And requested it be admitted.
All right, is there any objection on that one, Ms. Clennenden?
No.
All right, do you have what he's showing, what he's mentioning? Okay. All right, then I'll admit Exhibit 1.
Okay. I'd like to next, in order, mark for identification Exhibit 2. It consists of the license certification history. And it's dated October 20th, 2023. And requested it be admitted.
Okay. Any objection on that one?
No.
All right, then 2 is admitted.
Next in order, Exhibit 3 is the notice of today's hearing and proof of service. And requested it be admitted.
All right, any objection on that one? Then 3 is admitted.
Next in order, Exhibit 4 is the default decision in order in the petition to revoke probation against Danielle Quinlan, case number 20190000147, and I requested it be admitted.
Any objection, Ms. Clennenden?
No.
Then 4 is admitted.
Next in order is Exhibit 5, which is the stipulated settlement and disciplinary order in the matter of the accusation against Ms. Danielle Quinlan, case number OT 2015-183, and I request it be admitted.
Any objection? Then 5 is admitted.
Exhibit 6 next in order are documents broadly classified as rehabilitation mitigation documents, and they consist of the following: a document from the Tarzana Treatment Centers, a letter from Jennifer Romero, a letter from James Nolan, N-O-L-I-N-D, a letter from the Center for Living and Learning, from Terry Rodriguez, a certificate from the Center for Living and Learning for an Outstanding Performance Award, a letter from Leah Munoz, a letter from Kathy Casper, and finally a letter from the Institute for Multicultural Counseling and Education Services, authored by Christina Shikes. And I request those documents be reviewed.
Any objection?
No.
All right, 6 is admitted.
Next in order is Exhibit 7, Your Honor. Exhibit 7 consists of certified copies of the criminal court records in the people of the state of California versus Danielle Quinlan, Riverside County Superior Court, case number SWM 1506-154. And it consists of the sentencing memorandum, the misdemeanor plea form, probation termination notice, notice of termination, the order to revoke criminal probation after program termination, the violation of probation advisement of rights and waivers, order to revoke probation after program termination, a program completion notice of the first offender program, and finally the minute order to commit that. And I request to be admitted.
Any objections? All right, then 7 is admitted.
Thank you, Your Honor. That concludes the presentation of the evidence, documentary evidence, and I'm prepared to provide a summary of the case.
You may proceed.
Members of the board, on or about April 3rd, 2018, the board filed the first amended accusation against the petitioner, which alleged that she was convicted of a substantially related crime, that she used alcohol in a dangerous manner, and sustained a conviction involving the use of alcohol. The facts of the conviction are that on January 12, 2016, Ms. Clendon pled guilty and was convicted of one misdemeanor count for violating Vehicle Code Section 23152. Ms. Clendon pled guilty, and the underlying circumstances there were that on October the 21st, 2015, Ms. Clendenin was involved in a traffic collision with another vehicle, and she displayed visible signs of impairment. Regarding the dangerous use of alcohol charge, the board alleged 3 separate incidences. One was that on January the 4th, 2017, Ms. Clendenin was found by law enforcement displaying visible signs of intoxication at a hotel in Temecula. Ms. Clendenin became combative with paramedics as they attempted to treat her, and she was subsequently arrested for public intoxication. The second incident occurred on October the 21st, 2015, when the petitioner was identified operating a vehicle while intoxicated, and it relates to the conviction that I just discussed. And finally, the third incident occurred on March the 16th, 2014, when Riverside County Sheriffs responded to a call and found Ms. Clendenin displaying objective signs of impairment. The sheriffs determined that Ms. Clendenin was too intoxicated to care for her own safety, and she became combative with the law enforcement officers and was again arrested. On September the 6th of 2018, pursuant to the stipulated settlement and disciplinary order, Ms. Clendenin admitted the truth of each and every charge involving the accusation. And less than a year later, in March of 2019, the board filed a petition to revoke probation after finding that Ms. Clendenin failed to comply with her probation terms and conditions. In several regards, she failed to file quarterly reports, failed to submit to her continuing education requirements, failed to renew and maintain a current license after it had expired, and failed to complete cost recovery in a timely manner. She failed to undergo clinical diagnostic evaluation, failed to attend group support and recovery meetings, failed to enroll in biological fluid testing, and failed to notify the board that she had ceased practicing. The petitioner was served with the petition to revoke in March of 2019 by first class and certified mail, and she failed to provide a notice of defense timely. Accordingly, in May of that year, the board issued the default decision in order, which effectively revoked the petitioner's occupational therapist license. Fast forwarding, November of last year, the petitioner filed the instant petition for reinstatement, asserting that in the recent years she has received counseling and therapy, and that she's got the medical help and therapeutic support that she needs to treat alcoholism, that she's been able to better manage her life stressors and other conditions that cause the matters that gave rise to the revocation of her license and discipline in the first instance. And she now seeks to re-enter the profession of occupational therapy. And that concludes the summary of this case.
Okay, thank you. Ms. Clendenin, do you wish to make any opening remarks, sort of an outline of your petition before you testify, or call others to testify, or are you ready to just start with your testimony?
I'm ready to start.
Okay. Then I'll administer an oath to you. If you could raise your right hand, please. Do you solemnly state under penalty of perjury that the evidence that you will give in this matter shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes, Your Honor.
Thank you. You may put your hand down. So you don't have an attorney, you don't have to question yourself, anything like that. Just tell the board what it is you want them to know about the petition, what you've done since the loss of your license, any other matters you think are pertinent and important to your petition, and then if there are questions from the board or Mr. Edwards after that, they will ask them at that time. Right now, please proceed.
Members of the board, thank you. Your Honor, thank you for allowing me to testify today. I very much am proud of the work that I did as an occupational therapist and wish to be reinstated. And I do take full responsibility and have been accountable for the actions that I took. It was an extremely dark period of my life. After my son was born, I began to experience what I now understand to be feelings of deep depression that I was ashamed to get help for. I further fell into depression over my divorce in 2014, and I self-medicated with alcohol, not realizing the implications that it would have on the rest of my career at that time. And
I just did not understand the gravity of my decisions at that time. I was very deep into my mental issues, and I had not sought any type of help because I was embarrassed and ashamed of what was happening to me. I saw that my life was falling apart, and I did not want to. I walked away from my occupational therapy career thinking that it would expire and all of it would just pass to the wayside. And I just did not understand that I needed to respond to the board, and I just wasn't functioning well in my life. What I've done in the past 3 years, I will be celebrating 3 years of sobriety from alcohol on November 20th of this year. I began to rebuild actually in December of 2018 when I received help from a therapist who's with me today, who came in support of all the work that I've done in the past year's work with her. I sought treatment in 2019 and then became a very active member of Alcoholics Anonymous in 2020. Since then, I attend meetings now 5 to 7 days a week. I've increased that because I've had more women want to engage with me in terms of sponsorship. I feel that I'm a role model in the community and I'm proud of my life today. I sponsor them and attend meetings as well as work with my sponsor. I've worked the 12 steps of Alcoholics Anonymous twice. And it's given me a deeper understanding of where I was, and it gives me a deeper appreciation of how far I've come. I feel strongly that I would be able to contribute to the field of occupational therapy with this additional life experience that I have, because I've developed a level of empathy that I did not ever think that was possible. And I am absolutely willing and able to fulfill any type of requirements set forth by the board, whether educational, in respect, or in disciplinary actions. I do want to speak to the matter of the financial piece of it. I was on state aid at that point, and I had no means of, I was in such financial disarray and in such a low place that I was unable to even begin to think about what paying that back would look like. And unfortunately, I was in a survival mode of life, and I realize now the gravity of my actions, and I realize that I should have acted responsibly and responded to the correspondence from the board, but I was afraid. I was afraid and I was ashamed. And I demonstrate a life that is so different than that today, and I'm proud to be my son's mom. I'm a proud member of AA, and I really want to further my career in occupational therapy, and I'm excited about my future, and I really hope and pray that occupational therapy is a part of that. Thank you.
Thank you. Start with Mr. Edwards. Do you have questions, sir?
I do, Your Honor. Ms. Clendon, in your application packet, you were enrolled in the Tarzana Treatment Center, correct? Okay, and that was in October of 2019?
Yes.
Okay. And is that an accredited, licensed nonprofit organization?
It is.
Okay. And they provide services for treating substance abuse and mental health support?
Yes.
Okay. And you completed that program in March of 2020?
Yes.
Okay. And how many days a week were you a part of the Tarzana Treatment Center during that time, from October to March 2020?
From October until December, I was in full-time residential substance abuse treatment. so that was 24/7. And I received medical and substance abuse counseling during that time in the group format and in individual sessions with counselors. I then decided I was given the option to continue, and I wished to take as much assistance as that was available to me, and I did engage in the outpatient program. And I attended that until March. And there was no requirement placed upon me for any part of it, but I did feel that I was gaining so much, and I began to build my presence within the sober community that I am today with the experience I had at Tarzana Treatment Center.
And what did you learn by and through your participation in that program?
I learned the importance of engagement in a 12-step program. I learned how to function as a sober woman within the community and how to manage stressors within my life. I learned coping skills that I still utilize today and continue to build on in therapy outside of that treatment. I've gained a lot.
Okay, and in your petition, you indicate that November 2020 is your sobriety date, correct?
Yes, it is.
Okay, so between the time you left the Tarzana Treatment Center and November of that year, did you continue to consume alcohol?
There was intermittent periods. I was still under the premise in my mind that I believed that I could conquer it without Alcoholics Anonymous. I knew that it could help me potentially, but I had always worked through every problem in my life by hard work of my own accord. And I hadn't fully engaged with the community at that point and was still operating on that whole idea until November of 2020.
Okay, and what caused you to cease using alcohol in November of 2020? Was there an event or an incident that caused you to?
There was not an incident. I had been attending meetings with women in the program, and I just decided to ask a woman to sponsor me on November 19th, and from that day forward, I didn't look back. I began working with her and taking the suggestions that she had for me, and I saw the great success and the growth that she had experienced. I admired her, and I wished to emulate that. And I just began living that life fully engaged and not doing all of that work alone.
Okay. And are you still attending AA at the Valley Club in Northridge?
I do.
Okay, and how many days a week are you at the AA at Valley Club?
I currently attend 5 to 7 days a week because 2 women have asked me to sponsor them over the last year.
Okay.
And so my presence, I feel, I'm able to demonstrate for them how the program works by showing up myself.
Okay. Are you also attending one-on-one therapy?
I am, yes.
Okay, and how often are you doing that?
1 time per week.
Okay.
And I've had the same therapist since December of 2018, who's present today.
Okay, so your therapist is here today?
Yes.
And what's that person's name?
It's Dr. Christina Sikes.
Okay. And Dr. Sikes authored one of the letters that's part of your
Yes.
rehabilitation?
Yes.
Okay. And you prepared an addendum letter, and you stated that you've learned significantly from your personal mistakes. What can you describe those mistakes, and what did you learn from them?
I learned that using substances is not a means of helping any type of problem, and that anything that I put into my body is not conducive to helping with anything that is going on with me, whether it be the mental health issues that I began to struggle with in 2009 when my son was born, or the ongoing use of it, how it completely changed the course of my life for a very brief, dark period that I am extremely remorseful for. It is not, those actions are not who I am or how I conduct myself in my life, and never have been. So I, again, am willing to take any additional type of responsibility, and just, I'm really proud of the growth that I've had, and I'm really proud that I'm able to convey the message of sobriety to others in my active community of Alcoholics Anonymous, to give others hope. I really felt entirely hopeless at that time, and I had disengaged from anything that I had garnered so much pride for, particularly my career with occupational therapy. I was so proud of that and so ashamed to have lost it. And I do believe that I can make changes. I just am extremely sorry for that time in my life, and how I make amends every day through my actions and service to others. It's the best way. I live the best way that I can in service, and I wish to just grow in that respect in giving back.
You also mentioned that you are now engaged in, quote, exceptional relationships. What are those exceptional relationships? And with whom and why are they exceptional?
I have a sponsor that has 17 years sober, and she has become one of the best allies I've had in my life. She's a role model in the community, and I've been able to develop friendships with other women in particular in the program because of following in the footsteps of women that I admire. I surround myself with women that I admire in the program. I now am a case manager as of June of this year for Brass Tacks Recovery, which is recovery life management for clients where their families have exhausted all other options, and they don't know quite how to problem solve through things. And I'm part of a team now, and I assist an interventionist with her plans in helping and advocating for clients and helping them develop a voice and a place in the recovery community. So I'm really proud of the people that I work with. They're upstanding and have decades of sobriety in the community. I have the least amount with my upcoming 3 years. And I am extremely proud to have been selected to be part of that team. I do know that my background as an OT does shine through in the respect that I do believe strongly in helping people with life skills that didn't have the foundation that I had. It's not a medical model, but again, it's advocacy for people that were hopeless, and I can only help to make reparation through my living amends.
Just briefly directing your attention to some of the letters that were submitted in support of your petition. One letter is from Jennifer Romero, and you've known Ms. Romero for 3 years?
Yes.
Okay. And you met Ms. Romero through your work with AA, correct?
Yes.
Now, the letter from Ms. Romero, it's not dated, but do you know when it was prepared?
It was prepared in November of 2022.
Okay.
2023, I'm sorry. No, I'm so sorry. 2022, last year.
And is Ms. Romero, did you inform Ms. Romero about the circumstances that gave rise to discipline of your occupational therapist license?
She is part of my support system in Alcoholics Anonymous, and she's fully aware. I've been very transparent with the women and the groups with which I attend. I have been very transparent during my shares in Alcoholics Anonymous in a general way, in order to share how useful the tools I've gained in AA have helped shape changes in my life. I've experienced spiritual growth, and Jennifer has definitely been part of my support system that continues to exist very strongly.
Okay. And she's aware of the circumstances of your license?
Yes.
Disciplinary action?
Yes.
Okay. And you also have a letter from Mr. Noland, correct?
Yes. Yes.
And you've known Mr. Noland for a year and a half?
Yes.
And also through AA?
Yes.
Okay, that letter is not dated. Do you know when it was prepared?
It was also November of 2022, so that would be now 2.5 years as a correction, yes.
Okay.
Mhm.
Did you inform Mr. Nolan about the circumstances of your disciplinary action?
Yes, Mr. Noland is part of my recovery community and that I'm very active within. He's part of the AA fellowship, where I attend meetings at the Valley Club in Northridge, and where we do service work and provide support to one another so that we can sponsor. I rely on people like James with his 34 years of sobriety, as he's a role model to me. He's a dad, and he's a business owner, and he leads an extremely successful life despite his obstacles, and he's a friend that I have aligned myself. I put myself in close proximity with in the group, and he's just one of several that I do that I really stay close to, so I have a significant amount of support and have ongoing.
You submitted a document, it looks like a certificate for outstanding performance award from the Center for Living and Learning. Can you describe why was it that you received this award?
I was in case management for the Center for Living and Learning, and that is a nonprofit that received funding from the Office of Diversion and Reentry, and because of my performance and work with clients on felony supervised probation and those that had been exited from substance abuse programs, I was placed as the program lead, so that I began to train new case managers on the team, and then led a team to place those clients that had been in both of those programs, probation and from substance abuse programs, into training programs that would allow them to a new start on life. They completed the training programs after our assessment period, and they went on to entry-level work in solar panel installation at a significantly higher wage than they would have had a chance for prior. I was put as the lead of this program, and I was able to work with the Office of Diversion and Reentry, and they allowed me a lot of flexibility with allowing to just to put together a program for those clients so that they could have a better start in life. And it was a very successful program. All 12 of our clients that entered the training program, they all gained successful employment in the solar panel installation industry, and they also entered into the recovery life model, whether it be Narcotics Anonymous or Alcoholics Anonymous. So I'm
Okay.
very proud of that work.
Okay. And what year was that you received it? It's not dated on the.
That was
certificate.
in 2022. That was in March.
Okay. And for the record, it's the document date stamped AGO-061. March 22? You have a letter from Kathy Casper. And how long have you known Ms. Casper?
I have known Ms. Casper for, it's coming up on my 3 years of sobriety. I had been in and out of AA for several years, having tried it on my own. However, I asked her to be my sponsor, and I've done a lot of deep personal work in terms of the 12 steps of AA. I have gained a tremendous amount of support that I have today with her, and she's a woman that I look up to in life, having come back from the adversity of drinking and then participating in AA and utilizing the supports around her. I've just aligned my life with her and work closely with her on a daily basis. Yeah, she's like the main part of my support system that I have today, and I'm really proud that she's my sponsor.
Okay. And although it doesn't specifically state, did you inform Ms. Casper about the circumstances that gave rise to your disciplinary action?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay, I'm going to just go into a bit of the prior probation issues. The underlying accusation that was filed in 2018, it alleged that you had conviction involving alcohol. Okay, and at that time, the board offered you an opportunity to maintain your license when you entered into a stipulated settlement agreement, correct?
Yes.
Okay. And just a few months later, you were unable to comply with those probation terms and conditions.
Yes.
Okay. And now, at that time, did you attempt to contact your probation monitor to let that person know that you were struggling with probation terms?
No, I did not.
Why not?
I was under extreme financial duress, and I needed to keep moving. Unfortunately, I sought housing in sober living environments, but again, the finances were difficult, so I continued to move and change my address multiple times in an attempt to start over, and I lost complete track. I had no plan of working. I couldn't even fathom working in any capacity, and I did not, again, understand the gravity of my actions not to respond. I was aware that it would expire, and because I had never been in trouble before in my life, I thought that the expiration would just mean that I wouldn't be able to practice. I didn't understand that it would have long-standing effects.
And when you mentioned the expiration, you mean when your license
Yes.
expired? Yeah. And so, knowing what you know now, would you do that differently?
I absolutely would. Yes.
Now, when you entered into the stipulation, the board offered you the opportunity. Did you have concerns upon entering into the stipulation that there might be some concern with complying with the probation?
I had so many concerns. I had the hope that I would be able to handle my life like I had always, and that I would be able to stop drinking on my own. I was unable to do that. I really had the intention when I entered into that agreement with the intention of stopping. It wasn't something that I was able to do on my own, though I believed with my heart that I could stop and stay stopped so that I could comply and resume my life, but I was unable to.
Now, going back to the criminal matter, the 2016 DUI conviction, you resolved that DUI conviction with probation with the criminal court, correct?
Yes.
And in that matter, you agreed to 3 years probation with terms and conditions. And part of that was that you complete a first offender drinking and driving program.
Yes.
Okay. And you enrolled in that Riverside drinking and driving program in February of 2016?
Yes, I did.
Okay. And you were terminated from that program because you attended the program under the influence, correct?
Yes.
Okay. Now, can you explain how it was that you attended the first offenders program under the influence? What were the factors that contributed to that decision?
I cannot. That part of my life is really inexplicable, and again, not representative of who I am. The fact that I would do something like that is really unfathomable, that I put other people at risk by just being out in the community. It's not how I conduct myself in any way, shape, or form. My decision making and I had none of that. I was very, very deep into using alcohol to self-medicate for all of the depression that I had begun to experience, and then it just escalated and it took on a life of its own, and I'm extremely ashamed of that behavior.
Okay, so I've gone over a couple of instances where you had opportunities to comply with probation, and there's been some issues there. If your license is reinstated with terms and conditions, what assurances can you provide to the board that it can trust that you will be able to satisfy probation conditions?
I am fully committed to whatever requirements that are set forth by the board, and I commit myself fully to all of those obligations in full. Any type of recommendations and requirements that are made of me, I would intend to fulfill to my best ability, and I have so many supports in place and have approached life so differently in the past 3 years, not doing things on my own. I have a support community in Alcoholics Anonymous. I regularly attend and see high value with the therapy that I attend and the personal work that I've done. I'm a present mother. I am a present employee for the clients that we work with. I'm also a great member of the team that I'm on. I do wish to grow within my career in occupational therapy, however, because that's always been my passion. And again, I do believe that I can contribute even more, and am more driven than ever, really, for success in my career. And I'm able to lend a level of empathy that I did not have prior, and a level of understanding of my clients, particularly in mental health. And that part of my life just does not define who I am. And again, again, it did happen, and I am extremely, extremely remorseful for it. But again, I live my life very differently, and in service to others, I really feel that I can contribute to the field of occupational therapy. I really do.
Just a few more questions here. Are there any criminal matters pending against you that the board is unaware of?
None.
Okay. Any civil cases pending against you the board is unaware of?
None.
Okay. And just a few more. Why do you seek reinstatement of your license?
I would like to return to this, the well-esteemed career, the career that I worked really hard to develop. I'm really proud of the career, those years that I did work as an OT, and I know that I can contribute even more. I feel that I can represent the field and continue to grow, and just I want to be a part of this well-respected profession.
Okay. Are there any professional opportunities awaiting you should you become reinstated?
I have left that open to my experience here with the board. I currently work with clients that have mental health issues that are substance related, and again in an advocacy type of role. I would like to pursue, continuing education and ongoing education, and so that I may become as current and as skilled as possible in that realm, particularly because I just feel that I can really make a difference.
Okay, and that kind of leads me to my last question, which is, what have you been doing to stay on top of different areas of the field of occupational therapy, if anything?
I have not done any continuing education because I haven't worked in that capacity in some time, but I am willing to, again, do any type of education that's required of me. I do work in a field that is somewhat related, though not in a medical capacity, and I'm able to use somewhat of my background of helping people with their daily living skills in a very loose way as it applies to their recovery. And it's really more of a recovery model, and I would be willing to do any type of continuing education. I just haven't sought that out myself because I would seek the direction of the board and recommendations before I would ever attempt to take something on like that myself.
Okay. Your Honor, that concludes my questions at this time.
Okay. Fire board has questions? Start with President Miller.
I always defer to the board first.
Okay. Start on my left.
I have a question. Hi, I'm Richard Bookwalter. Ms. Clendenin, do you have any, have you taken any efforts to expunge your record or to work on your criminal history and the processes that are available to do that?
I have not. There hasn't been any reason in terms of my life today. And so if it would serve my purpose of me being reinstated with licensure in good standing, I absolutely would begin that process and seek expungement. I had looked into it, but there was no real reason to whether I do that for any reason in particular, and I've just been focusing on bettering my life, and the court piece of it is it hadn't been providing any implications on my work since I got sober.
And when's the last time you took a continuing education course in occupational therapy? When did you last practice?
I last practiced in 2014, I believe. Yes.
And the last courses you took were back then, or?
Yes, I was always current on that. And then I essentially just walked away from it, again, not understanding what was happening to me in terms of my mental illness and then self-medicating. So I didn't have a grasp on my life like I had always had before, and had always been in good standing with my license, and always put that at the forefront of something that I've worked really hard for and was really proud of representing the profession. So I really want to return to that, and I'm willing to do that work.
And how many years were you practicing as an occupational therapist?
It was 16.
And in what area of practice?
I was working for the visiting nurses, and so it was a lot of family, caregiver, education, activities of daily living.
Home health?
Yes, it was home health, yeah.
Thank you.
Ms. Whitlisbeck?
Hi, I'm Christine. First of all, I just want to congratulate you on almost 3 years of sobriety. I think that was great. So you had said that you were drinking to self-medicate for your underlying depression and anxiety. So tell me a little bit more of the work that you've done to address that problem.
As of December of 2018, I did seek the help of therapists and had a medical intervention, and I continue with psychiatry as well, and on the medical piece of it as well. I did not realize that, taking medication for depression or any type of anxiety at that time would have helped me instead of using alcohol, and I got lost in that. But I began, and it was sometimes 3 times a week for therapy. I was super intensive with it, like I am with my work. And now I see my therapist once a week and continue with psychiatry once a month for check-ins. Really, I just feel that it's something that I maintain as part of my life, and I see that that's just one of the pieces that keeps everything flowing. And I had a tremendous amount of relief once I had the sober piece and the work with a therapist who has given me so many coping skills, and I've learned to manage stress differently because of the tools. So I just feel like that is just part of my ongoing wellness that I'll always see as a benefit to me. And I wish I had seen it sooner, and I wish I hadn't been ashamed to get help.
What do you do to manage stress?
I'm a very spiritual person, so I'm involved with other people. Being involved with people that need help is in doing community service. When AA is a large part of it. Working with people, not focusing on me and focusing on others in need is a huge means of managing stress. I exercise, I love to read and learn. I'm involved with my son's baseball team. I'm part of the Fellowship of Alcoholics Anonymous, and having a sober community of friends. All of my friends are sober, and all of my social activities are around some type of physical activity. I meditate and pray, and I just have so many tools. And again, not doing life on my own, and having utilizing the resources that I have around me has been so important to me in managing stress. And so I just handle life differently, and I feel that I'm able to help my 14-year-old with that as well.
Thank you.
Ms. Pavlovich?
And I also wanted to congratulate you on coming 3 years. That's no easy feat, so cheering you on there. If your license was reinstated, in what capacity of OT do you think that you would reach out to first to process it?
I would have to say I want to learn as much as I can in mental health, and the substance abuse community. I feel occupational therapy is a beautiful adjunct to adding those life skills to people that haven't been provided them, never mind developed. People lose things along the way in life, and they develop a hopelessness that I see occupational therapy really being able to, I can provide a useful, strong presence in providing those tools in the mental health realm. I've worked in a variety of settings. I enjoy working in home health, though I understand the, probably closer supervisions, usually recommended for therapists that have been out of practice, and I had many years of experience before I went out went and worked with the visiting nurses in the home setting. So eventually I would like to get back there in problem solving with people in home health within the mental health realm, but I understand that there's a huge level of need in hospitals and schools, things like that. There's just so much that can be done, really. So I'm excited to learn more potentially. So thank you.
One more question. Fields change a lot in 10 years, almost 10 years. There's a whole new terminology, a whole new framework. There's a lot that got jumped on. But this is exciting and an opportunity. I'm thinking in terms of skill sets, traits, and behaviors. My last question just kind of pertains to after going through what you've gone through and knowing that you want to get back to OT, how do you connect those dots? And you said I developed more empathy as one example. What does that look like full circle? Again, skill sets, traits, and behaviors. What you just experienced going back in the OT profession. What do you bring to the table that's different?
I know, and I'm confident in my resilience. I come from a place of hopelessness within my own mind, and in accessing resources. That's been vital to me. No longer doing things on my own isn't perceived as a weakness as I once believed. I look at things differently. My perception is in appreciation for smaller things and not taking things for granted. I have a respect for myself as well as the others with whom I work, both on my team and with the clients that we serve. I operate within my life with integrity, and I walk with dignity today instead of I can feel the remorse and the sense of, yes, it was having made mistakes, but that there is hope for people that do want to make changes, and I hope to instill that in others, or at least allow them to hear that it is possible, because planting a seed just was a very tiny one for me from a person that had walked in my shoes in their life. So I've just developed a lot of self-respect, but it started with self-forgiveness, and I see so many components of OT within that I really feel I do have a lot of work under my feet in terms of education and getting current, but I'm willing to put in the work. Thank you.
All right, Mr. Cabrera, any questions?
Yes, first of all, I'd like to commend you for all the efforts you've done to reconstruct your life by what you've mentioned, sponsoring so many people and sharing your experience and giving them hope. Probably when you come to the last is some of your colleagues have taken your questions, but I have one question I want to regurgitate again. It was asked by one of my colleagues here. What do you do besides going to the AA? What other coping mechanisms have you learned to ease the anxiety of just living and the stressors of life? What do you do to?
I exercise daily. I listen to music. I have a social circle that my friends, outside of the meetings that I attend, I attend fun types of activities that are just community related, or they're things that I enjoy, like music and yoga at the beach, or things that I would recommend to clients of ours. Just healthy types of activities. I eat healthy. I kind of do a mental checklist at the end of the day of where can I balance my life out a little bit better if I find that it's kind of work heavy, to make sure that I build in good and healthy activities for myself. I know that a balanced lifestyle is really important, and spirituality is a huge piece for me as well, and it brings me a huge sense of peace within myself, and I'm able to tap into that very readily, and it helps with my overall sense of ease. And I've learned a lot through therapy and just learning how to breathe when under stressful situations, or taking breaks during the day, making sure that I nourish my body, and it's just all about balance, really, and I'm really in tune with that. I know that it's important, it's vital.
How many do you sponsor? How many are you sponsoring right now?
I have 2 women that I'm sponsoring. One woman just celebrated 1 year of sobriety, and this upcoming month, right after my birthday, the second woman will be celebrating 1 year as well.
How many years did you say you have sobriety?
Yes, I'm coming up on 3 years on November 19th. Thank you.
Yeah, I have, first, one, I wanted to clarify something that I did work in the industry for almost 16 years. So that doesn't add up a little bit, since you got your license in 2003 and you stopped in 2014, so it's more like 11, or?
In California, yes. I graduated from Pontiac University in 1990.
Okay. So you have that additional 5 years?
Yes.
So
Yes.
that's
I work for the state of Connecticut and in their Birth to 3 program, and then I moved to California in 2003. That's when I received licensure here. Yes.
So my other question would be, how come you don't have any current letters of support? They all seem to be from a year ago, and even though you're with these people for, 5-7 times a week for 3 years.
Oh, I submitted it at the time of the application, and I have regular contact with these individuals, and Dr. Christina is here today. I just have regular contact with the same individuals that wrote the letters. I could receive, provide more. I felt that I had embraced the scope of what I was trying to capture during the application process. But I could certainly, I could provide more if the board sought that, so I'd have no problem.
Got it, thank you. And then just one last thing, you said you like to read and learn a lot. So when you read or you were enjoying, any of that, does any of that involve OT, like updates or research or any, since it's such a passion of yours? So I'm just curious. So,
And I was waiting really to see the direction of the board. In terms of, I like to focus my efforts toward, the direction to which I'm headed. So I currently work in the recovery management model, so it's been research around the ADA and staying current with that in terms of making sure that people that they're not just going into the shadows because they think that they can't go back to their job or that they can't that they have to do life completely alone and outside of the recovery realm. It's been very general, and I would want to. I do need some. I seek the parameters, I guess, of the board and maybe for a framework. I didn't want to guess, but I do work.
But then you missed it, since it was your passion. That's the question. It's
been 10 years, so it's been a while. To be honest, I would need to make a start in the direction of mental health. In terms of my readings and things, I'm just kind of at the beginning of that piece of things. I would really want to grow more, but I don't have anything that I have, studied per se. No.
Thank you.
President Miller?
Hello. I want to thank you for being so forthright in your answers and thank my board for asking so many of the questions that have gotten us here. You recognize that we have to be, respectfully, I want to go here and ask you questions, and I want you to know it's really designed to make sure to act as if, we have to imagine it as if the consumer's safe with you being relicensed again. So I want to give you context around my question. So if you were reinstated, because we've had probation and there's cost recovery in there. So there's cost recovery, there's continuing ed. Let's talk about generally that you're comfortable. How are your finances now? Where are you at now? Can you talk about the stability of that now?
Yes, I have a full-time position, and I would be well able to afford any kind of cost recovery at this point. Absolutely. I am a completely stable and independent with my career, yes. And I just, there would be no issue with cost recovery at this point. It's a completely different scenario than it was back then.
And having not, so if I understand this, the last time you practiced was 2014. And about what month was that? I'm just curious. June. So we're 9.5. Okay. So if part of your probation is to include continuing ed, what is the capacity in your life for how much you can take? Like, you have other things in your life, a child, but what does your capacity look like?
I have a lot of flexibility with my job, so I would be able to, there's not an issue with that at all. I don't work a 9 to 5 per se. It's very, very flexible. So those hours can be spread out within 48 the 40 hours can be spread out within the 7 days of the week if necessary, and there are days when I work, you know, well past the 5 o'clock hour. So I have the flexibility, and I can present that to my boss. Absolutely, she's in full support of my seeking licensure.
And which area do you want to practice in?
I would like to see, mental health is really, it's nothing that I had really ever thought about, like, really becoming really skilled at, and I would really focus my efforts on that. I had enjoyed the flexibility of of working in home care for years as my son was, when he was young. And now that he's getting older, I really, and with the life experience that I have, I really see the value that I could bring to the mental health realm. And I'd be willing, you know, in any setting, really. I really, again, really love to learn, and it's just something that I really want to apply myself to.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. That completes your testimony. Do you have any other witnesses you'd like to call?
No, I just did want to say, in terms of the letters that I had, I did submit those at the time of the application last year, and then did need to wait for I requested that the meeting be held here in Southern California, so I did wait for that. So the timing of those letters was concurrent with that. So I just wanted to note that.
Meaning that you could have come before us in August in San Diego, and you waited, is that right?
No, last year when I applied, I was, I was asked if I would like to wait for the meeting to be held down in Southern California. The only option I was provided was this date. I'm not aware of anything in August.
And our August meeting was Oakland, so tells you where my head is. All right.
Okay. Are there any other documents other than what Mr. Edwards has presented that you wish to present to the board?
No.
Okay. And Mr. Edwards, do you have any witnesses you wish to call, sir?
No additional witnesses, Your Honor.
Okay, so what I'm hearing is that's all of the evidence for the board to consider. So now, if either or both sides wishes to make closing statements, just summarizing what they're requesting, or what they think the outcome should be, and final remarks before the board convenes in closed session to consider the petition, you may do that now. I'll start with you, Ms. Clemente.
Thank you again to the board and Your Honor for hearing my testimony, and I do hope that you consider my application for reinstatement. I do feel that I can contribute to the field of occupational therapy. I do know that there's a lot of work to be done, and I'm willing to do that and represent with pride this field, so thank you.
Mr. Edwards?
Just briefly, Your Honor. You know, there was this issue of the past probation violations involving criminal probation and also the administrative probation in this case. And, you know, we know alcoholism is a cause for concern, and it does present both actual and potential harm to the public, which this board is obligated to protect and must consider of paramount importance. And that said, the petitioner has presented documentary and testimonial evidence that she is now and has been on a path of recovery. As board member Cabrera has noted, 3 years of sobriety, as everyone has stated, 3 years of sobriety is to be commended. We will not be making a recommendation at this time, but we would suggest that if the board is considering reinstatement, that the board revisit the August 2018 stipulated settlement agreement in order terms that were offered at that time, in addition to continuing education courses that might be relevant to this case.
Okay, Ma'am, if you want the last word, you may have it.
No, I just thank you for this opportunity. I do, thank you.
All right, thank you. That will complete the hearing on the petition. We'll go off the record now, and the board will convene in closed session to consider it.
So, Your Honor, may I just direct the public that we're going into closed session so they can leave? Okay, Bryce, I'm going to open and close, so for our public, I think.
You're gonna.
Well, we're open now.
We're open, okay. Are we on? Okay, great. So just wanting to inform our public that the board is going into closed session. We have to go in on this matter, and then we have to go in on another matter. We'll come out of closed session, and we will open, because we have to open, but we won't be going into any business. We will resume tomorrow at 9:30. We will continue the rest of our agenda for items that we did not get to, starting with 8, and then 10 and 10 on, as well as tomorrow's agenda. So thank you very much for your participation, and have a great evening. And